Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Virtual Motorsport Series YouTube channel and round 3 of the BPTuning Contender Series Silver Split. We are here at the wonderful Autodromo Internazionale de Enzo e Dino Ferrari. I absolutely nailed that pronunciation, which I was not expecting to do. We're here for a 1 hour and 40-minute race, the first of the 3 endurance rounds in the Silver Split this season. I'm joined in the commentary box by my good friend and co-commentator, Charlie Thornton. Charlie, how are you doing this evening?
Yeah, very good. I'd just like to congratulate you on what's the word? Pronouncing the track name correctly. That was very good.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting to do it. It's been a long time since I've had to say the full name of the Imola circuit off the top of my head. So I managed to pull that one out of the depths of my brain somewhere from the last time that I had to say it out loud.
Yeah, well, it was very good, and yeah, as you said, very highly anticipated round, the first endurance round of our Silver Split this season, sorry. And we're at Imola, so it should be a pretty exciting race, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Will
absolutely.
Ferrari replicate what they did in real life in WEC? We'll see.
Well, at the moment, it is a Ferrari sat at the top of the timing tables. In fact, I believe it's Matteo Bassan that we are looking at the moment. No, it's not quite, I don't think. I'm not sure who that is we've got on screen as of right now. Oh, that is Matteo Bassan that we've got on screen at the moment. Just coming through the chicane at the top of the track and down the hill towards the Ravazzas. Matteo Bassan, of course.
This track is so old school, so it's going to be an interesting race to see how people do.
Yes, absolutely. The Imola track is what people refer to as an old style of track in terms of there is no concrete runoff anywhere. I think the only place there's paved runoff at Imola is through Variante Alta, right at the top of the circuit, and of course through Acca Minerale. Really the only corners where there's a paved runoff. If you go off track anywhere else, you're straight into grass or gravel and losing yourself generally quite a lot of time if you do dip a wheel off. And of course, picking up those vital track limits infringement points. These endurance rounds, 1 hour and 40 minutes, you have a limit of 5 track limits points that you're able to pick up. You can get anywhere between 0.25 and 1 whole point for various types of infringements based on how much time you gain and how much you cut the track by. So drivers are going to have to be wary of that, especially around Imola, where you really have to push these track limits. There are a lot of corners where you're right on the white line, not only on exit but also on entry. So I'm sure we're going to see a lot of drivers pushing those white lines to their absolute limit to try and extract as much lap time as they can around here.
Definitely, and I mean, that's the risk you take. You take the risk to push further and faster and harder, but you risk yourself of getting a drive-through or another sort of penalty or making a mistake and going off track or contact or whatever it may be. But yeah, so it's going to be important for these guys to keep it on track and keep it within those limits, but also, getting as much as they can out of each lap.
Yeah, absolutely. It is going to be really vital for these drivers to extract the most that they can, especially in qualifying, which we are just about to come to. Of course, it will be our LMGT3s that take to the track first. There will be the LMGT3s that take to the track first so that we can get their qualifying done and see who is going to be on pole in the LMGT3 class. They've got 10 minutes at the start of the session, and then there is a little break whilst they finish their laps and return to the pit lane, and then the hypercars will come out and do the final 10 minutes of qualifying. So in just over 25 minutes time, we will have our full grid set for the hour and 40-minute race around here. And if what I hear on the old phone lines is correct, there's a chance of rain hitting Imola this evening.
I see. That will be definitely spicy, and again, it will just add to that jeopardy of the race. And these drivers are going to have to try and keep on the track while also, keeping on those limits, and seeing how their tyres are faring in the weather if it does rain.
Yeah, wet weather is always difficult, even at tracks that have kind of the wider runoff areas, and even just tracks that are wider to begin with. Imola, again, in keeping with that kind of old style, old school track kind of vibe, is very narrow. It's one of the narrowest tracks that we've got on the WEC calendar, let alone on most international racing series calendars. I believe at its widest point, WEC Imola is only about 15 meters wide, which for a racetrack sounds like a lot. Obviously, 15 meters, but most racetracks tend to be, you're looking at 22 meters wide. So
Yeah,
15
definitely.
meters is quite a reduction.
Here we go. Definitely interesting.
We're going to switch over to the LMGT3 standings. It's Christoph Rappel at the top, bang on 50 points, followed by Aidan Russell and Marco Galetti. That top three have been the top three in every round that we've had so far. The first two rounds, the top three have been identical. Jean-Baptiste Thomas in fourth in the first of the Corvettes, followed by Eric Nonemacher in the next Ferrari. Cole Bradbury is second of the Fords, with Juan Viviers in the same car just behind and on the same points. Also on the same points, Davide Canton in the first of the BMW M4 GT3s. Robin de Poiron in ninth is on 10 points, followed by Thibaut Texera rounding out the top 10 on 6 points. As we move on to the rest of the LMGT3 standings, it's going to be Eduardo Dorito in 11th with Frank Van Ginneken in 12th. Joanna Vora is 13th with Sandis Vasilevsky, the last to score points at the moment, in 14th. Our non-point scorers so far, Mark Warmington, Luciano Achazzo, Craig Foreman and Lucas Lucht. As we are going to switch now to the live action, the LMGT3s roaring out of the pit lane, all in quite a long line here to try and do their tyre preparation, get round the lap, and aim, of course, to be the fastest. I know I sound very much like Will Buxton here, but obviously that is the whole aim of qualifying, is to be the fastest person on track. So that is what all of our LMGT3s here this evening are going to be aiming for. We've got 13 of them on track, so there's going to be plenty of action across the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting to see who can take pole. I believe it's been Christoph Rappel on pole every single race so far, hasn't it? So see if he can be dethroned this time.
Yeah, Christoph Rappel in that Ferrari 296. It is a very strong car when you can get it set up correctly and in its performance window correctly, which Christoph Rappel does appear to be very, very good at. Currently leading the way for promotion to the gold split in the Pro Series for Season 3 is Christoph Rappel, and he'll be looking to hold on to that. The other crucial thing about these endurance races, obviously, pole position matters slightly less. There's more time to gain positions in an endurance race. There's a little bit more strategy that can be done. Things can change around a little bit more. But crucially, there are more points on the table. In the sprint rounds, we follow what most people deem as normal points, F1 points. 25 for the winner, 18, 15, and then continuing down for the top 10. In the endurance style point system, the winner gets 38 points. So that's the equivalent of finishing. That's the equivalent of finishing between just between fourth and third in a sprint race. You get that many additional points when if you win an endurance.
It's a pretty big increase of points. So these guys are going to be right on it, and Christoph Rappel is going to be on top once again on the third round of the championship so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Once we've got the first laps in, we will pop up the old comparison graphic to be having a little bit of a look. But these beautiful onboard shots inside these, I have got to say, incredibly beautifully detailed models in Le Mans Ultimate. Absolute credit to the devs over at Studio 397. The interiors of these cars look absolutely beautiful.
They do.
Through Acca Minerale, you want to clip both apex curves, which Christoph Rappel does very nicely. Not too wide out on the exit. He's got a little bit of time on the table through there, as you would expect. These are all bank laps that are coming in at the moment, if not cars weaving around. Just to try and finish getting some heat into their tyres. It does take a couple of laps for tyres to really bed in, and as we see here, Christoph Rappel now backing off down the hill. That is not full speed into the first of the Ravazzas. Just setting up, prepping another lap to get started. But we should have the first lap times coming in any second now, really.
The thing is as well is that these guys are going to be wanting to find free space, maybe get a little bit of a toe, but not have it so that it what's the word? Impacts their lap too much.
Yeah.
But we have got Marco Galetti on pole at the moment with a 45.7 so far in the D Station Aston Martin. And lap times are coming all through. Thibaut Tixiero just goes second. Davide Canton up to the top with a 45.294.
Yeah, that's in that number 46 BMW, yeah. Really good lap from Davide Canton.
But as we saw earlier, Christoph Rappel just taking that extra lap to get his tyres up and keep it like that. And hopefully he'll be charging up for pole position.
And just interestingly, looking at Christoph Rappel's times, he was way up on Davide Canton on the lap that Christoph Rappel abandoned. He was 4 tenths up in the first sector. He was another 5 tenths up in the second sector. Christoph Rappel, if he can get a lap together, which unfortunately he's not going to be able to at the moment, as traffic galore up at the top of Variante Alta, as we're just seeing there. If Christoph Rappel can string a lap together here, he's going to be a very, very fast man in that number 66 JMW Engineering Ferrari.
Definitely. But as it stands, it's still Davide Canton on top. These guys getting their laps in and going again for a second run, I guess.
Yeah, only 4 minutes left at the moment, and if we could get the qualifying detail panel up to see which drivers are improving where, that would be absolutely brilliant. Please broadcast control. There we go. There it is. So Davide Canton, it's 2 personal best sectors, but he's not going to go to the top. He is going to improve. He's going to get closer, but it's not going to take him to the top of the pile, which is currently fronted by Jean-Baptiste Thomas in the Corvette. I tell you what, if you told me that a Corvette was going to be leading the way with 4 minutes left to go in qualifying, I probably would have told you were being silly. But here we go. Yep. Jean-Baptiste Thomas at the top of the times in the number 82 Corvette at the moment is having an absolutely brilliant time of it.
Definitely. Just want to see where this Christoph Rappel will come through. Just coming through the first sector now. He does take the fastest first sector time.
The fastest fast sector, yeah, that's very good.
But so he does look like he's got command and control of this field so far. Even without setting a lap, he's going to be rocketing right to the top, at least showing his nose to the top 3. Hopefully.
Yeah, almost a 10th and a half up at the moment. Now more than a 10th and a half up, an improvement of 0.044 of a second through the middle sector. He is going to have to watch out. There might be just a little bit of traffic coming towards the end of this lap. We will wait and see. I think it's managed to clear out of the way, but there was definitely a relatively Corvette-shaped car in front of him earlier on. I'm not sure where that's disappeared to, possibly just slightly further out the road. Indeed it is. Christoph Rappel to the line. It's a 44.0 he needs to be. I'm pretty confident he's going to be the first man in the 43s. He's not going to be the first man in the 43s because Galetti's done it just before he can, but it is going to see Christoph Rappel to the top of the times by 0.065 of a second. It wasn't the fastest final sector. The fastest final sector currently in the hands of Marco Galetti with a 36.702. But
that's definitely something we didn't see coming at the moment, did it? Did we? We didn't see Galetti getting so close so soon as well, but Rappel just having that little bit of advantage. Galetti only 600 off there.
That is Jean-Baptiste Thomas. If we can, he's gone back to the garage, I believe, but Jean-Baptiste Thomas had a crash, RTG'd back to the garage, and he's not going to be able to take any further part in this session because he has RTG'd from the track to the pit lane. Had a crash coming out of the second chicane, turns 4 and 5. He is trying to come back out on track. He shouldn't He is out of this session, and we need someone to be able to go in and do that, because he shouldn't be taking any further part in this session. But he is coming back out on track. Hold on, let me get into the sim grid and I'll...
So Christoph Rappel still on top now at the moment. Just a couple more minutes left of this qualifying session for the LMGT3s, and then we'll head into a brief period of a wait, and then we'll go into the Hypercar session. And we'll see what the Hypercars can do in their section as well. But Christoph Rappel leading by 0.065 to Marco Galetti in the D station Aston Martin. Jean-Baptiste Thomas, as we just mentioned, did get into the top at the start of, well, in the middle of qualifying, but unfortunately he'll start third at the moment. He is back out on track, but he shouldn't be. If you RTG in this game, in this series, then you are out of qualifying. We could be seeing some further penalties coming in for Jean-Baptiste Thomas if he continues.
Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to do anything about it in this session. The server is not responding to me on SimGrid at the moment, so I'm not able to do anything about it. But if anyone is going to be looking through the rules at the end of the session, Jean-Baptiste Thomas did return to garage from the track and then come back out. That is not allowed.
Absolutely. As we head in now, we've got the Hypercar standings up here. So Matteo Bassan leading with 40 points at the moment over Nicholas Ulrich in the Toyota with 33 points. Rasmus Andreasen, Chris Stoltz, Philip Schlichting, all on 18 points at the moment, the Ferrari, Peugeot and Ferrari. Stanislas Peugeot, 16 points. Andrea Previato with 15 points. Paolo Ortu with 14 points. Mathieu Bouquet in the Alpine with 12 points. Robin Deschamps in the Ferrari with 10 points. Heading on to our 11th onwards. Giacomo Tessera with 4 points in the Peugeot, Filippo Cogolo with 2 points, and Mattia Previato with 2 points in the BMW and Ferrari, respectively. Stefan Kohler, Aurelian Pellicori, Mohamed Colombo, and Mikel Balan with 0 points at the moment. So, an interesting qualifying session for the LMGT3 class.
Yeah, interestingly, just looking through the final order for the LMGT3s, Christoph Rappel did improve right at the death. He's now 0.14 ahead of Marco Galetti. Two drivers who weren't able to set a time, Eduardo Dorito and Eric Nonemacher. Actually, I tell a lie, Eduardo Dorito's out on track at the moment, and he goes and slots himself 9th right at the very end. He will have, just been able to fit that lap in. It was very, very close to missing the final time he could start a lap. Top three, very, very close, covered by 0.2 of a second. Then a little bit of a gap back to the mid-pack skirmish that there does tend to be in the silver split, with drivers fighting to be inside that top 10 at the very end of the race. There's going to be a little bit of a wait here. The Hypercar drivers are allowed out into the fast lane with 11 minutes left on the clock, and are then allowed out onto track with 10 minutes left on the clock to do their qualifying runs. 14 Hypercars in the session this evening, so hopefully we'll be able to see some nice close qualifying times and then some good racing across the next hour and 40 minutes race that is to follow. Whilst we're in this little lull in the action here, I'd like to talk to you about our name partner for the Contender Series here at the Virtual Motorsport Series. Obviously, BPTuning.net is our name partner for the Contender Series, handcrafted setups by one of the fastest esports drivers currently out there for Le Mans Ultimate and ACC, Kieran Prendergast. You might know him. The name might sound familiar. That would be because he takes part in the Platinum Split here at VMS. In fact, he, if memory serves, he won the Platinum Split in what was the Pro Series in Season 1, did Kieran Prendergast, an incredibly fast driver racing in the Mustang this season. He builds all of the setups for BP tuning by hand for a variety of skill levels and for a variety of conditions, temperatures, etc. So if you are in the market for some ACC, some LMU setups, or even for some one-to-one coaching with Kieran Prendergast, the man himself, head over to bptuning.net and check them out. We are incredibly grateful to have them on board for the Contender Series in Season 2 and look forward to continuing our long partnership with Kieran Prendergast and his company. As we tick down just 30 seconds.
What I would also like to say is we are so close to 1,000 subscribers on the VMS YouTube channel. So if you are not already subscribed, please do so. Please give it a like. I don't often do this for these streams, but you know, we are so close to a great milestone. So if you are out there, you're not subscribed, subscribe, and we'll see you next time whenever we are online, on live again.
Yeah, absolutely. 1,000 subscribers would be absolutely brilliant. As here we go, the Hypercar's roaring out the pit lane. A couple of calls for unsafe releases there, probably, but nothing we can do about it. Thankfully, no contact made. Obviously, LMU does have a pit lane contact system, so you can't just phase through other cars like you can in other simulators. ACC and iRacing spring to mind. So drivers do have to be careful when they're exiting the pit lane, when they're exiting their pit boxes or garages, because you can and will actually have contact with people and damage your car if you drive into them.
We've seen it happen a few times, haven't we? And it's not everyone's greatest day when that happens.
Yeah, we have seen it a couple of times, and it does tend to be... What's the word I'm looking for? Embarrassing, I think is probably the word I'm looking for. Absolutely. The most. It is not anyone's shining moment, as here we go. Cars roaring out the pit lane now. So these guys, as I'm sure you have all been able to work out, those who are watching, have got until the clock hits 0 to start a valid flying lap, get around the track as fast as they physically can to take the overall pole position for the Imola endurance race in the silver split. As you can see, getting their tyres nicely warmed up, weaving back and forth on anything that really resembles a straight line.
It's needed for them, especially without the tyre warmers in the WEC and in this game, so those tyres are going to be pretty chilly.
Yeah, especially when you think that obviously all of these drivers came and sat in the fast lane of the pit lane for 45 or 50 seconds before they were even allowed out in qualifying. So there is a lot of time that these drivers have been sat, not even able to do anything to their tyres, which only cools them down more.
Exactly.
So
the heat will dissipate throughout them and not be there for long. Yeah, we'll see who can take pole this time around for the Hypercars. Hypercar field has been a little bit more varied this time, I think, hasn't it? Or has it?
So it's been Matteo Bassan has won a race, and so has... Oh, I cannot remember for the life of me who's second in the Hypercar standings. We won't switch to them. Let me...
Ulrich, isn't it?
Yes, you're absolutely right. It is. It's Nicholas Ulrich was the winner of the other race in the Toyota. He won round 1,
yeah,
which was maybe Bahrain.
I want to say Bahrain.
No, Sebring was round 1. Where they did pre-qualifying. Sebring was round 1. Then it was Portimao last week. So Nicholas Ulrich took the win in the first round, the first sprint round, which was at Sebring, and then round 2, it was the turn of Matteo Bassan. Although, of course, some of you may remember Carlo Barberi being the first man to cross the line, which indeed he was. Carlo Barberi was the first man to cross the line, but he is a reserve in the Silver Championship this season, so he is non-points scoring. So he crossed the line first. We put him up first on the top 3 provisional graphic, just to recognise his achievement as having been obviously the overall winner of the race. But because he's a reserve, he's not scored in the main championship. So the win did go to Matteo Bassan, which also promoted Chris Stoltz onto the podium, which I'm sure he was very, very happy about.
I'm sure he was. Here we go then, Mohamed Colombo coming across the line. He goes up to the top with a 32.0. We've got Carlo Barberi, who just came in with a 31.6. Chris Stoltz coming in. Andrea Praviato coming in. They're all coming in and all setting faster lap times. So Andrea Praviato currently with the 31.266.
Yeah, Mattia Praviato, the other brother, as you might say. Mattia Praviato slotting into 5th at the moment as Giacomo Tessera goes to the top of the pile in the number 93 Peugeot by just 0.014 of a second. And I tell you what, if things stay this close for the rest of qualifying, I'm going to be very, very happy because it means we'll be in for an action-packed race. But things really, really tight at the moment, and lots of cars. I mean, we've still got 6 cars still to set a lap. So plenty of action to come.
And at the moment, we currently got 7 of these hypercars within a second, which is really, really incredible.
Matteo Bassan almost 4 tenths up in Sector 1. Sorry to step on your toes there, but Matteo Bassan is, I mean, stepping on everyone else's toes pretty much with that kind of pace. We'll see what he could do through the middle split of this lap. It's 5 tenths up in the middle sector. This is going to be an absolutely roaring lap from Matteo Bassan. First man into the 30s, possibly the first man into the 29s, if he can keep this kind of pace up through the final sector as well. Only the 2 corners in this final sector. Ravazza 1, you go past the house where everyone likes to try and get on the balcony during the race weekends here. Out of Ravazza 2, the kink towards the line for Matteo Bassan on his onboard. We'll see what kind of time it is. Quick is the answer. How quick is it? It's a 30.1. Like I said, almost the first man into the 29s, but Andrea Praviato has also improved. He's less than 2 tenths behind. Then it's a little bit of a drop back to Chris Stoltz, who I think had an invalid lap in the middle of his run, or possibly was just doing a little bit of a tyre cool-down preparation before doing another run. But things very tight at the top at the moment. Rasmus Andreasen puts himself in 3rd. A very familiar name to anyone in the esports world is Rasmus Andreasen. Just less than 8 tenths off of the ultimate pace at the moment.
Interestingly enough, as I mentioned, we had 7 people within the second there. It's now down to 4 people within the second. So Matteo Bassan at the top, just roaring to life and improving his gap, improving his time.
Yeah, it was an incredible run from Matteo Bassan. Chris Stoltz is going to be coming to the line sooner rather than later. He might have backed out of this lap through Sector 3. I think he has. It was faster though. He was about 2.5 tenths, 3 tenths up. But I think he backed out of it through the final sector and is now starting a new lap instead. He crosses the line indeed. It was an invalid Sector 3, so I think he's probably popped the curbs too hard through Variante Alta and invalidated his lap as Mattia Praviato now slots himself into 3rd just ahead of Rasmus Andreasen.
Yeah, very interesting.
These guys are absolutely pushing the limits of this track at the moment, as I'm sure you can all see. Philip Schlichting on a lap, he's improving. He's 3 tenths off of the overall best, 3 tenths off of the overall best Sector 1, but he's improved on his own time, which is really what drivers are aiming for, to improve on their own sector times. So that little green box is a good thing for Philip Schlichting. We'll see what it is through the middle sector. Again, it's an improvement in the middle sector compared to his last. Although his middle sector hasn't come up on my timing page, so there's a chance that Philip Schlichting has invalidated his lap through Sector 2. And is now driving essentially for nothing. To the line for Philip Schlichting. It is an improvement. It's just about 4 tenths, 5/10 of improvement there from Philip Schlichting. He'll be really happy with that. As Chris Stoltz goes to P3 ahead of Carlo Barberi. The top 4 now covered by 0.3 of a second, and we're back to having 7 drivers within a second again, which is absolutely what we want to see.
Going to be who can take over from these Ferraris this time, though. Ferraris seem to be dominating in this championship in real life as well, in the FIA so see if anyone else can have anything to give for them, either that be a Peugeot, an Alpine, a BMW, or a Toyota. Matteo Bassano still not set a new lap time, faster lap time. He's got over a minute left of this qualifying session, so he'll be able to get around and do another lap. Ooh, a big moment there for one of the Ferraris just in front of Giacomo Teixeira.
I do believe that Matteo Bassan had the fastest Sector 1 there. He bested his own Sector 1, but then Giacomo Teixeira took it away from him. With that incredible Sector 1, I've got to admit, from the Peugeot man. Matteo Bassan's going to come to the line. It'll probably be an improvement for the number 51 Ferrari driver. Indeed it is. First man in the 29s, 29.805. That is properly cracking on. We'll see what Giacomo Teixeira can do. I don't know if it will be much. He'll move up the order. It's 0.4 behind Matteo Bassan, but it's P2 at the moment. The fastest of the Peugeots, with Chris Stoltz still in P4. Lots of drivers, I think, calling time on their qualifying here and returning to garage. And lots of drivers. The top 5 all in the pit lane. So no more lap times are going to be coming from the top 5. So it's all on the rest of the field now. Who can find the time? Who can find the improvements on what are now the final runs for all of these drivers? Oh, wide for Mattia Prebiato. That's his lap over. Wide for whoever that is in the BMW. I believe that'll be Filippo Cogolo, so that'll be his lap over. Matthew Bouquet's off the track. That's his lap over. Rasmus Andreasen is trying to carve his way through all of the chaos in his Ferrari number 50. The last car in that little train, and all 3 of the cars ahead of him decided that they were no longer interested in being on the racing surface. That was absolutely ridiculous. I'd like to see the onboard POV of that from Rasmus Andreasen. Everyone on track, it's almost like they were allergic to it in front of him there. That was absolutely ridiculous. But Rasmus Andreasen, he is up on his personal time. He's down in the middle sector. That doesn't surprise me. That was the sector where everyone in front of him decided they weren't interested in setting a lap anymore. So a little bit of distraction through that middle sector for Rasmus Andreasen. He will continue to push to the line, hope that he can find a little bit more time than what he has so far. It was a big time find in Sector 1, so hopefully that time lost in the middle sector won't have hampered his lap too much. He's looking to move slightly further up the order. He doesn't better his own time. That's disappointing for him. Filippo Cogolo also into the pit lane. Rasmus Andreasen is RTGing, so that is qualifying over and the grid order set for this 28 car field that we've got here tonight at Imola.
Do you fancy to saying it again? The full name?
We're here at the Autodromo Internazionale di Enzo Edino Ferrari. See?
There you go.
I absolutely nailed it. With the Italian accent as well. If there's anyone Italian watching, please tell me if my pronunciation is bad. Because I feel like I'm nailing it, but I'm also English, so I'm probably not. I'm very conscious that we don't have the best track record with languages, so please do let me know. So we will have a look through in just a couple of seconds. We will look at the full grid order. Here we go.
Jameson in the chat has just said, nailed it for a Brit.
Let's go. Pole position is Matteo Bassan in the number 51 Ferrari with Giacomo Tessera lining up alongside him on the front row. Duplication, it's Andrea Previato and Chris Stoltz, yet again Ferrari and Peugeot taking third and fourth. Carlo Barberi and Mattia Previato make it a Ferrari central for row number 3, with Rasmus Andreasen just pipping Matthew Bouquet to the line, the highest of the Alpines sitting in 8th. Philip Schlichting is in 9th with the only Toyota, I believe, in the field at the moment. Stanislas Pajot in 10th. Paolo Ortu in 11th with Robin Duchamp in 12th, making yet another Ferrari row for row number 6. Filippo Cogolo, and I've lied, Mohamed Colombo in the Toyota in 13th and 14th respectively, with Stefan Köhler rounding out the grid in the other Alpine. On pole yet again in LMGT3 is Christoph Rappel, lining up 16th overall, with Marco Galetti taking P2. No Aidan Russell to worry about this race. Marco Galetti hoping for P2 ahead of Jean-Baptiste Thomas. Davide Canton and Juan Viviers take 19th and 20th on the grid respectively on row 10. Thibaut Texera and Johan Evora, with a very good qualifying in the Porsche, take 21st and 22nd. Ahead of Frank van Ginneken and Eduardo Dorito, the last man to set a lap in this session. Luciano Achazzo and Craig Foreman are behind him in 25th and 26th. Then it's Mark Warmington ahead of Eric Nonemaker, who did not set a qualifying time, to round out the 28 car grid that we've got here in Imola this evening. As we cut now, cars are lining up on the grid. I say on the grid, they're not actually on the grid. They're on the back straight down towards the Ravazzas for the start of the short rolling start that we get here.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens into turn 1 this time around. I know we've had a lot of incidents at previous Imola races in this game and in this series, so we'll see how it goes. And obviously it can be, as we mentioned earlier, it's so tight, so it could be pretty chaotic.
It is very much in the nature of the design of the track. Obviously Imola, those who know it and those who have been watching the stream so far will know, it's 3 corners for the first corner, really, because they all run into each other. The way that you take the first dictates how you take the second, which dictates how you take the third, especially in these high-speed hypercars, because it is literally just a flick of the steering wheel in between each apex. It's very much a single file normally. And obviously, on the first lap of a race, you can't be single file unless you've managed to get a brilliant start. So we will expect to see a little bit of chaos as here we go. The grid rolls away. It's Matteo Bassan leading the way in what is a sea of red Ferraris, broken up by the occasional blue or silver in the form of Alpines and Peugeots. And there are
green
windscreen wipers going already. Is it raining already in Imola? I think it might be. Is it raining already? Drivers, I believe, are on the medium tyres. Is that what people were R2Ging for? Has it started raining already in Imola? We'll wait and see. We're going to get the green lights before we get a chance to look at the tyres. But I do see definitely some wipers going, aren't there? Everyone's wipers going. Is it raining already in Imola? I think it is. We're going to be going green any second now. The lights are on all the cars, which signifies again that it's probably raining at the start of this race. We're going to go green. Here we go. Green flag is in the air, and Matteo Bassan gets an absolutely brilliant launch. So does the Ferrari, who was starting in 4th. I believe that might have been Carlo Barberi all the way back there. Giacomo Tessera gets a brilliant start. Chris Stoltz not so much in the other Peugeot. Down towards turn 1, and who is that launching it out the inside? That's massive contact. Cars off on the inside of turn 2. It's the 2 Ferraris, as that promotes Matthew Bouquet to P3 in the Alpine. Wow. And he's going for a move on Giacomo Tessera into the second chicane. Nothing going there. Chaos again in the background. 3 and 4 wide coming into the second set of corners. I'm trying to keep up with everything that's going on, but it's almost impossible. What a brilliant start for Matthew Bouquet, capitalising on the fault. I believe it was probably Mattia Previato and Carlo Barberi who had those issues at turn 1. Possibly Andrea Previato involved, down to 11th for Andrea Previato. Really unfortunate. Jean-Baptiste Thomas, meanwhile, has got to the front of the LMGT3 train as Marco Galetti's looking for a way past Christoph Rappel. It is definitely raining here in Imola. windscreen wipers are on everywhere. Sorry, Charlie, I've just been talking non-stop for the last 2 minutes or so.
Isn't it?
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Vivier's also there as well. Loads of different different GT3s in this field as well. We've got Corvette, Ferrari, Aston Martin, Ford, and a Porsche, now a Beamer, in the top 5 and top 6. So really interesting stuff there. Marco Galetti goes a little bit wide on that corner out of the chicane, Variante Alta. But here we go, Matteo Bessan leading the race already by over 2 seconds to Tessera and Bouquet, who are battling on a knife edge at the moment.
Tell you what, if Tessera and Bouquet are smart here, they'll realise that this is probably their best shots at a podium so far this season. They need to work together. Surely they have to. Chris Stoltz is off in the background. That was possibly contact with Carlo Barberi, who's now ahead of him in P5. Chris Stoltz was off on the outside of turn 3. I think there might have been a little bit of side-by-side contact. I'm sure if there was, we'll see it reported to the stewards after the race. But he was definitely off track in the background, was Chris Stoltz, down to P6 now, as Christoph Rappel and Marco Galetti are still very, very close to each other. The D station Aston Martin looking to get past that JMW Motorsport Ferrari, but nothing going as of yet. Lots of battles up and down the grid at the start of this race. We will try and keep in touch with as many of them as possible. But with so much going on, it's a little bit difficult, as I'm sure everyone can appreciate.
Definitely. Well, here we go then. Tessera has closed in a little bit of a gap to Matteo Bessan over this lap so far. Down to 1.8 seconds as we speak, and then 1.4, sorry. So he's closing that gap in a little bit. Maybe these conditions could work for him in that Peugeot. We all know the Peugeot does well in the wet conditions, in real life especially. So it could be pretty good for him in this race.
Tell you who else you might want to look at quickly is Rasmus Andreasen, who's lining up Stanislas Peugeot for a move down towards turn 1. He's forced to the outside by Stanislas Peugeot. He's not going to take that risk through turns 1, 2 and 3, looking for what would be a triple switchback to get the run towards the next chicane. He's got a little bit of the run, but he's not going to be able to get alongside Chris Stoltz, who played that defence very, very well. Sat on that final apex just slightly too long for Rasmus to be able to get the switchback that he wanted. As whoa, hello, that's Mohamed Colombo up the inside of, I believe that was Robin Deschamps, who's got up the inside of there, with Andrea Previato trying to follow on his heels in the background, but not quite able to do so. Mohamed Colombo and Robin Deschamps now side by side as Mohamed Colombo gets that move done, but Robin Deschamps not too happy about the way in which it was done.
Yeah, at this early point in the race, the rain is coming down. They've got to make these positions up when they can. It might be the last opportunity for them to make these positions on track before, you know, the tyre situation goes AWOL, really.
And Christoph Rappel is back to the front of the LMGT3 field. We missed the overtake for it. It was happening in amongst all that chaos with Mohamed Colombo. But Christoph Rappel is back to the front, leading by a second. And Jean-Baptiste Thomas now being hounded by Marco Galetti in that D station Aston Martin. Marco Galetti would really like, I'm sure, to be able to finish P2 in this race instead of coming home on the final podium spot for the 3rd time this season. Although it would be a little bit poetic, finishing 3rd for the 3rd time out of 3 races that we've done. It does seem that fate might fall against Marco Galetti's best wishes this evening as he runs a little bit wide out of the exit of Variante Alta there.
We saw it though last round at Portimao though. Christoph Rappel, Galetti and what was the Mustang?
Oh, contact! Mohamed Colombo and Robin Deschamps are both around at the 2nd chicane. Mohamed Colombo gets rolling again. There was contact side by side coming into the chicane, and they're both around, and Robin Deschamps drops back to the very back of the field. Mohamed Colombo down to 14th, and ahead of them there's some side by side fighting as well. I'm trying to work out who that is that was side by side up there actually. I think it was some of the Ferraris in the little group ahead. There is a lot going on track right now, as Mathieu Bouquet is still trying to hold off Mattia Previato, who is now only a 10th behind and about half a car length behind. This could be very difficult for the Alpine man to try and hold off for too much longer, as what has happened? Jean-Baptiste Thomas is in the pit lane. Is it a drive-through for Jean-Baptiste Thomas off the start of the race? Is that how he got ahead? I think it must be for Jean-Baptiste Thomas, a drive-through. So he's dropped all the way to the back of the LMGT3 field. Or is there maybe a chance that he was on the wrong tyres? Has he had to make a full pit stop? Because he's dropped a long way back from the field.
Looks like he's just driven through the pits, I think.
I mean, he's dropping back into the hypercars now, which is very much unideal for him. And Mattia Previato still hampering on the back of Mathieu Bouquet. They've now obviously got an LMGT3 to deal with that they weren't expecting to have to deal with for probably another 5 laps or so before they were expecting to get to the back of the LMGT3 pack. And as the rain continues to come down, it only makes it more difficult. The switchback of dreams for Carlo Barberi. It's 3 wide as Carlo Barberi makes that move, the switchback out of the hairpin there. As he made it work, he's got the inside line for the next corner. Indeed, he has flashing lights behind from, I believe that'll be Chris Stokes, to let Jean-Baptiste Thomas know that he was making his way through, as he has done now. Christoph Rappel's disconnected. Christoph Rappel has lost connection to the server. So it's Marco Galetti to the top of the pack as Christoph Rappel disconnects from the lead. Oh, that is heartbreaking for Christoph Rappel. He's going to be so annoyed. He's going to be so annoyed that that's happened. Promotes Juan Viviers and Davide Canton to the podium with Eduardo Dorito in 4th, and Eric Nonemacher, who didn't set a qualifying time, is in 5th in the number 86. Incredible. In the number 86 Ferrari 296. That is absolutely ludicrous stats from Eric Nonemacher. It's only been 6 laps and he's gained, what's that, 9 positions? 8 positions? Something like that? Absolutely incredible. Craig Foreman and Frank Van Ginneken, by the way, both in the pit lane. Is there a chance that they started on the dry tyres and have had to switch over to the wets?
Possibly. That could be one of the factors that we have to take into account this time around, but I think like a lot of people have made those mistakes. Maybe they didn't know the rain was coming, or unexpected, but Robin Deschamps also in pit lane as well.
As it's now Carlo Barberi, although we're looking at Mohamed Colombo all over the back of Filippo Cogolo for what would be P11. Mohamed Colombo up the inside. There's a little bit of side-by-side contact. Mohamed Colombo does get through, but I doubt Filippo Cogolo is going to be massively pleased about how that overtake was made, and the flashing of the lights would probably signal that I'm correct in my assumptions there. Mohamed Colombo looking to get back up into that top 10 and score what I believe would be his first points of the season for Mohamed Colombo.
Sure he did not finish the race in Portimao, so I would guess this is his first point paying position, sorry. But yeah, I'm not sure what happened to him at Sebring.
Juan Viviers in the pit lane as well. What is going on? 6 laps in, are these drivers who have loaded in on quali setups, quali fuel, and are having to pit exclusively for fuel? Is that what's happening here?
That is very strange indeed.
Surely this is too many drivers for it to be them not putting on the wet tyres, because you'd assume that everyone would. As we cut now to Mathieu Bouquet, defending again from Carlo Barberi. Carlo Barberi's up the inside. Is there going to be room left for the Alpine man? Kind of just about. But Carlo Barberi, I believe, has come out on top this time ahead of Mathieu Bouquet, who's now having to defend yet again from Mattia Previato. A lock-up from Mathieu Bouquet. Mattia Previato's now round the outside of him. He doesn't have to leave room. Oh, splitting the LMGT3. That's always a brave thing to do, as Mattia Previato just about manages to get it stopped, but a snap of oversteer on the exit of the corner, and it's going to be Mathieu Bouquet back ahead of Mattia Previato and holding on to P4, at least for now, as they come past Johan Evora. And now they're going to have to watch out behind, because all of this battling between these three, although admittedly Carlo Barberi has now disappeared up the road a little bit, is bringing that group behind them ever closer, and that group behind them is being led by Stanislas Pajot, although Chris Stoltz, I think, would quite like to get back ahead of that Toyota man, who at some point has got ahead of him We missed that one whilst covering all the other drama going on track. As I say, drama on track. Chris Stoltz misses the second part of the chicane completely. Rasmus Andreasen along the outside of him now and ahead with the better drive. You know, courtesy of having actually been on track when accelerating rather than in the grass on the inside of Variante Alta. Move done for Rasmus Andreasen and up into 7th, which would be one of his better finishes this season as well for the Ferrari driver. As the leaders into the pit, everyone's coming into the pit lane.
I think everyone's started on dries and it's about wet enough now for them to switch over to those wet tyres.
Filippo Cogolo goes again, so does Mohamed Colombo. Stefan Köhler not coming into the pit lane. Paolo Orto is, Philip Schlichting is, Robin Deschamps I don't think is going to have to because I'm pretty sure he's already pitted.
Yes, he did.
So this promotes Eduardo Doritos to the front of the pack, but he's off track. Eduardo Dorito with a massive off-track moment coming out to turn 3. So it is certainly getting much, much wetter, as we can see on the live stream right now. So Eduardo Dorito now losing time, bundles and bundles of time, and Jean-Baptiste Thomas is miles ahead of the field. Jean-Baptiste Thomas is miles ahead of the field, but I think he only did a drive-through. I think Jean-Baptiste Thomas might still be on slick tyres. If we could possibly get the tyre graphic up, that would be brilliant, but I don't know if we're going to be able to. It's mediums. No, he's on wet. Jean-Baptiste Thomas is on wet tyres. He's the leader. Johan Avora is the leader, sorry. He's the first driver on wet tyres. He's been on them since the start of the race. Eduardo Dorito is the last driver on mediums at the moment in LMGT3, and he's not able to stay on track at all at the moment.
We didn't expect the rain to come so soon, did we?
Johan Avora is about to overtake Eduardo Dorito on track before Eduardo Dorito has even had a chance to make a pit stop to switch onto those wet tyres. And the Porsche man is through ahead of Eduardo Dorito now, who still needs to make a stop, and he's likely to lose a position to Thibaut Texera, who's also on those wet tyres since the start of the race. And you can see just how ginger Eduardo Dorito is having to be compared to everyone else, as I think Johan Avora might have just gone off track in front of him. That's what that little puff of gravel chalk was. As Eduardo, he's continuing. Eduardo Dorito's he's just keeping going.
This is very strange. I'm sure he would need to come into the pits at this point. If not, you're
Mohamed.
Yeah, Mohamed didn't stay out.
Mohamed Colombo's kept going as well. Are these guys hoping that the rain is going to be short enough that the additional pit stop or pit stops that the people who have pitted onto the wet tyres are going to have to do will cost them more time than staying out on the mediums is going to? Is that the strat here from Mohamed Colombo?
It could be. It could be not enough rain for him to come into the pits and take those tyres, but doesn't want to sacrifice that pit stop. We'll see what happens though.
I've never seen anything like this. Staying out for this long is certainly an interesting strategy. But he continues to do so. So does Eduardo Dorito, who's surely now being closed down quite quickly by the cars behind.
I would expect so at this point.
Johan Avora in that Porsche is the leader of the race in LMGT3. The Porsche, although it's gotten much heavier in the most recent BOP updates, does quite enjoy these wet conditions. It is fast in these wet conditions. So Johan Avora, it would not surprise me if he's able to maintain the gap that he's got at the moment, which by the looks of things is going to be about 4 or 5 seconds. Yeah, 3.2. I was close enough with just some guesstimation between the cameras there. He's probably going to be able to keep that gap, if not extend it. Who's that round? Who was that? That was Giacomo Teixeira. He's going to lose out on the podium positions here because Mattia Previato is going to get past him as well, which he has. And Giacomo Teixeira on those new wet tyres, falling off the track, turning round at the very top of the track there, Variante Alta in the gravel trap, has managed to get it moving again, which is a good thing because you can get beached in this game. But he's managed to get it rolling. He's managed to get it rolling once again and is back out on track, but losing positions as they go past Jean-Baptiste Thomas, who was the first to come down pit lane, although we think it may have been for a drive-through rather than for a pit stop onto the wet tyres.
Unless he already started on the wets, that could have been a factor that we have to take into account, and we don't know at that point.
Yeah, there absolutely is a chance that he started on the wet tyres. I hadn't thought about that. There is a chance that that was the case. But still, right behind Mattia Previato is Giacomo Teixeira. In fact, he's looking for that position back. Is the Peugeot man. I think he's conscious that Carlo Barberi is just behind these two, and might be coming to make this a three-way battle yet again. But Andrea Previato gets past. No, that was them lapping the Corvette, but he's chasing down. Andrea Previato is chasing down Rasmus Andreasen, who in turn is chasing down Matthew Bouquet in that Alpine, who was running in third in the opening part of this race and is now down in 7th following those strategy decisions. Mohamed Colombo finally makes the decision to come into the pit lane, but you've got to say it's far too little, far too late.
Absolutely.
And he is going to find himself plummeting down the order here. Going to be coming out, I mean, a long way back. You've got to think probably at the very back of the field for Mohamed Colombo. He'll be coming back out on track. Giacomo Teixeira still hunting the back of Mattia Previato. And if we look at the front of the LMGT3 battle, Thibaut Teixeira has actually gotten much closer to Johan Evora. He is right on the tail of Johan Evora now, actually. The gap less than 0.4 of a second. Is there a chance? We're going to spot the battle in the background here. Thibaut Teixeira is up the inside of Johan Evora. Does he get out the corner ahead? Does he get out of Tosa ahead? They're side by side up the hill. They're being split by hypercars up the hill. Is Thibaut Teixeira going to get this move done for the lead of LMGT3, again being lapped whilst on either edge of the circuit? And Johan Evora swoops around the outside in that Porsche and manages to hold on to the lead in LMGT3. I tell you what, this has been an absolutely ridiculous opening 20 minutes of this race so far. Thibaut Teixeira being held off still by the Porsche of Johan Evora, although a far better drive out the corner for the BMW man. Looks like he's going to get this move done into very anti-Alta. Johan Evora tucks back in, and that is move done for Thibaut Teixeira as he leads a BPTuning Contender Series race for the first time this season. He's going to be very, very happy with that, I can imagine.
Yeah, these conditions aren't looking to get better though. It's getting wetter and wetter, darker and darker. And these guys are just always on the edge, I think it looks like.
Meanwhile, if we can quickly hop to the battle at the front of the hypercars, Giacomo Teixeira has gone back past Mattia Previato, and they are now in a train. It's Mattia Previato and then Carlo Barberi behind. So Giacomo Teixeira back up to second, which he'll be happy with. He won't be happy that he's dropped all the way from the lead with that spin at Variante Alta, but he'll be happy to be back up into second. He's got a car's cushion in between him and between himself and Carlo Barberi, and so far Giacomo Teixeira is the man with the fastest lap in the hypercar class, and therefore obviously overall. So these conditions do look like the Peugeot is working quite well. That 9X8 Evo with the addition of the rear wing. As we've also got the battle, as we were just looking at, the battle for P6. Mathieu Bouquet leading a little three-man train as well, Andrea Previato. And we've got a yellow flag out on track. Who is that going to be for? I'm not quite sure. I'm trying to spot if anyone's moving down the order. I can tell you who it is. It's Mattia Previato. Mattia Previato's gone off track. There's been an issue. That car doesn't look to be too happy. We'll see as he comes through the chicane. Damage on the front end for sure, on that Ferrari. I think possibly Thraka Minerali. I can assume the only way that will have happened is contact with Carlo Barberi. Although in the wet there is always a higher chance of it having been a driver mistake. But Mattia Previato down to 9th, promotes Carlo Barberi to 3rd, although he will not be in the final standings as a reserve driver. So Stanislas Pajot at the moment is your effective P3, and everyone below him is then a bump to position up the order. And the gaps everywhere seem to just be opening up a little bit at the moment. Rasmus Andreasen dropping off the back of Andrea Previato. In fact, Rasmus Andreasen might need to keep an eye out as we look at Paolo Ortu and Robin Deschamps. Robin Deschamps looking to just get ahead of Paolo Ortu for P11 and then begin the hunt for Chris Stoltz, who's just about 3 seconds up the road from this pair at the moment. Robin Deschamps can't quite get alongside. Massive step of oversteer for Robin Deschamps. Oh my days, how has he managed to catch that? But that is going to see Philip Schlichting past and up into P12. Robin Deschamps too much on the attack and ended up losing out on the defence instead. As Mathieu Bouquet looks to defend from Andrea Previato, and Giacomo Teixeira is having to defend from Carlo Barberi all at the same time. Carlo Barberi is very, very fast at the moment. The Ferrari driver looking very comfortable in these wet conditions.
When do you think the guys will be starting their first pit stops of the race? Not obviously for tyres, but their first fuel stops.
It all depends. It's difficult. It depends on the weather, and it depends on what they did in their pit stops. There's some drivers who might have only taken tyres, just moved on to the wets, not taken any fuel or virtual energy, and there might be some drivers who did a top up of fuel and virtual energy as well as moving on to the wet tyres. In that case, in the case that they have switched onto the wet tyres only, then we'll be looking at their normal pit stop window of probably just past the hour, towards the 50-minute left of the race kind of mark, splitting the race down the middle, and taking it from there. If they did take fuel and virtual energy, then we could be looking at cars coming into the pit lane with as little as 30 minutes of the race remaining, because the rain really hit with about 20 minutes in. So drivers will be coming in between 40 and 30 minutes of the race remaining, which would be a tactical advantage, because less fuel and virtual energy in the pit stop does mean that you have a faster pit stop overall. So it will be a split strategy, but that all gets thrown out the window if it starts drying up again, because once it stops raining, if it stops raining, the amount of cars that we've got out on track at the moment will dry up the pavement here in Imola quite quickly.
Definitely. What I have also noticed is that Mohamed Colombo's in P8 at the moment. Where did he start? P14, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. P14 for Mohamed Colombo to start in, so up 6 positions. Really tidy little race for him so far, one that he's really needed, to be honest. A little bit of a confidence booster this race will be, although I say that, there's still an hour and 15 minutes of this race remaining. I tell you what, it feels like we've had enough action for 2 sprint races. For two endurance races already, let alone only the first half an hour of one. As a yellow flag out on track yet again. We'll try and pick up who it is, although it can be difficult to do. Only momentary. So whatever it was, not too big of an issue, I don't think. I think it might have been Stefan Köhler. He has just dropped a whole bundle of time to Mattia Previato ahead of him. So I think it was possibly the Alpine. As Juan Viviers goes round live on camera. That's Juan Viviers going around on the exit of Acca Minerali. The Ford man nose into the wall and now having to reverse to get back out on track. Let's hope he hasn't picked up any steering damage from that. Looks like it was a relatively square hit into the wall, but that front end of that Ford, I'm sure the trackside cameras will cut round to it soon, it's not going to be looking too happy, and indeed it's not. Quite a crumbled front end on that Ford Mustang. That is not going to be making for happy driving for Juan Viviers for the rest of this race. Now let's have a look. Where have we got some battles on track at the moment? We've got Paolo Ortu in P9. He's got 2 cars behind him, Philip Schlichting and Robin Deschamps, both looking to either hold on to or move up into the top 10. Philip Schlichting currently the last man scoring points, and I expect Robin Deschamps would quite like to move himself into that P10 position. And I rather doubt that Philip Schlichting will be too keen on giving it up, as Robin Deschamps was driving with 2 wheels in the grass all the way down towards the second chicane there. That's certainly a new strategy. One maybe he's bringing over from the old iRacing tyre temperature glitch days. I'm sure there are some people in chat who will remember that whole kerfuffle. Over the hill, Robin Deschamps up the inside of Philip Schlichting. Is that move done? It is indeed, up the inside. That was an absolutely brilliant move from Robin Deschamps. Up the inside towards Acqua Minerale he goes now. Finally in the points paying positions is Robin Deschamps. And now he's going to be hunting down, you'd think, surely, Paolo Ortu just ahead of him to try and move himself even further into those point scoring positions.
One thing as well that I think we should mention is the fact that, you know, the guys are going to have to battle with the spray as well as the wet conditions, because the spray is going to inhibit their vision, so it could look really confusing for the drivers on track when they can't see the car in front due to the spray.
Yeah, the spray in LMU can be quite extreme, I think most people would say, as Giacomo Teixeira being almost pushed round the apex of Tosa by Carlo Barberi. And that is certainly Carlo Barberi possibly starting to just get a little bit impatient. I think he knows that in the wet, as there we go, he's alongside Giacomo Teixeira, but Giacomo Teixeira is going to have the inside line for the first part of Acqua Minerale and stays ahead of Carlo Barberi for now. I think Carlo Barberi, I think he's got a feeling that he can be faster than the leader, can catch the leader in these conditions, and at the moment Giacomo Teixeira is being a very effective cork in the bottle for the Ferrari driver as he tries to get back up towards those top levels again. Robin Deschamps has just DNF'd from P13. He was P11, sorry. Robin Deschamps has had to retire from the race. He's back in the garage. Not sure what has happened there. I'm assuming a crash for Robin Deschamps. There wasn't even a yellow flag, so at least not one that I saw. That is really unfortunate for him, a DNF for Robin Deschamps. He's back in the pit lane. And Giacomo Teixeira has managed to gain himself a little bit of time here. In fact, not even just a little bit of time, over a second. Now his gap to Carlo Barberi, and it's going to widen again as Carlo Barberi continues to get stuck behind LMGT3 traffic at almost every turn at the moment, which is going to be rather frustrating in the cockpit for the Ferrari driver. It's always very annoying when you see the car in front of you getting the good luck that you would like with the LMGT3s. As I'm sure Charlie can confirm as another driver who quite regularly does multi-class racing. It's always frustrating to see the car in front of you get lucky with the slower class of car.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is as well, I do a lot of racing, multi-class racing, where I am the slower car. So, you know, I understand it a lot more than most people, you know, most people do, because people are like, oh yeah, just get out of my way, you know, that sort of thing. But in reality, it's not about that. It's about, you know, being patient, taking that opportunity if you have the opportunity. If not, just wait for the next time.
Yeah, although being patient, I think, possibly not the #1 thing on the mind of Robin Deschamps at the moment. Robin Deschamps, sorry, Carlo Barberi. I think Carlo is just looking to get back on the tail of that Peugeot in front of him in the hands of Giacomo Teixeira. As Johan Evora is being overtaken by Marco Galetti. It's going to be a move up the inside towards turn 1 for Marco Galetti, and he gets the move done. He's up into, that is P3 now for Marco Galetti, and Johan Evora, who was leading, is now 4th in class in LMGT3 after having started on the wet tyres and not had to make a pit stop. It'll be interesting to see now. I think Thibaut Teixeira is in the same basket. I believe he started on the wets as well. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly Jean-Baptiste Thomas can gain on Thibaut Teixeira in that BMW to get that move done. As though I thought there were overtakes going on, it's just Robin Deschamps sliding down the order from unfortunately having had the DNF. As Mohamed Colombo is really coming alive in these wet conditions. If we could hop over to Mohamed Colombo's Toyota quickly, he's now quite comfortably within a second of Andrea Previato as well. The Toyota driver really making things work here. As that was pretty scary. I'm gonna say I'm trying to keep my language PG because that was quite close. With Mohamed Colombo going around the outside of not 1 but 2 LMGT3s coming out of Acca Minerali, which is one of the tightest points on the track already. And just something of interesting note here is that on my game there were some quite large rooster tails whenever these cars were coming down the front straight, and it's not that the rooster tails aren't there, but they are far less there than they were. So I think we are possibly looking at the track starting to dry a little bit. The rain is still coming down, but I think it's less. It's a lower level of rain than it was before, less intense rain than it was before. As Mohamed Colombo continues to close on Andrea Previato here. Although I believe that's possibly the lead battle that we're looking at the moment. Not the lead battle, but Carlo Barberi and Giacomo Teixeira. Indeed it is. They run down towards Acca Minerali. And Carlo Barberi again, almost pushing Giacomo Teixeira through the apexes of the corners here. As these cars continue, they're not losing time to the leader at the moment, but they're not really gaining either. And every time that they have a little squabble, they lose about a second, between half a second and a second, which neither of them really wants to do. And the track does certainly look like it's drying up. In fact, looking at the windscreen wipers of Carlo Barberi and Giacomo Teixeira, neither of their windscreen wipers are on. Although they are now. Whenever they get onto a straight bit, I think they have to turn them on because of the rooster tails. But I think outside of that, the track is certainly looking like it's starting to dry up. As this train behind Andrea Previato continues to grow with Mohamed Colombo and now also Rasmus Andreasen attached to this little queue, looking to move themselves up the order. This would be for P6, which would be a handy little points haul in these endurance races. Compared to the normal 6, I believe it would get you 9 or 10 points for finishing in 6th compared to the 8 it is normally. Yeah, 10 points, I think. It must be possibly 11.
P6 is normally 8 points.
So I think it must be 10, possibly 10 or 12 points in the endurance format then. So again, a nice little bundle of points to bring home if Mohamed Colombo were to be able to get ahead of Andrea Previato. And just a quick note, at the front of the LMGT3 field, first of all, we're watching at the moment the battle between Davide Canton and Johan Evora. Although we're also looking at Canton trying to get past some lap traffic here, which is not massively playing ball. I believe that's Craig Foreman they're getting past. But at the front of the LMGT3 field, there is a closing gap between Jean-Baptiste Thomas and Thibaut Texera. That gap now down to 1.3 seconds as Andrea Previato has to cut the inside of the second of Variante Alta. Mohamed Colombo tries to get past. There's contact between the three of them. Oh my days, they've all kept it in a straight line. How on earth have they done that? And they've come out in the same order. That was ridiculous. Andrea Previato hopped across the inside. Mohamed Colombo was forced out onto the gravel to try and avoid Andrea, who obviously had no choice but to come back onto track because of the speed he was already carrying. And then Rasmus Andreasen tried to go up the inside of the two, tried to go up the middle of the two of them, found out that there wasn't really a Ferrari-shaped gap there, and they all played ping pong for about a second and managed to come out facing the right way, but also in the same order that they were beforehand. So I guess all's fair in love and war is the is what's happened there. But that was very heart and mouth to watch, as Jean-Baptiste Thomas is now within a second of Thibaut Texera coming across the line to start what is their, I believe, 23rd lap.
Question?
No, it can't be their 23rd lap. It's Matteo Bassan's 22nd lap, and these guys are 2 laps back. So this is lap 20 for the LMGT3s at the moment. Another yellow flag out on track. I'm not sure who that's for. I'm trying to spot who is dropping time rapidly. I think it might be for Paolo Ortu. I think might be the car that was the cause of that yellow flag just coming through Tosa. He has dropped a little bit of time. I'm really trying to work out who it is, but it's quite difficult to do so because there's no module that pops up next to someone's name to tell you that they've had an issue. There's Mohamed Colombo. Oh. No, I tell you who it was. It was Andrea Previato, who's now behind Mohamed Colombo and Rasmus Andreasen. Has there been contact? Something's happened there that we've missed, because Andrea Previato is now behind Mohamed Colombo, which he shouldn't be. As Rasmus Andreasen is ahead of Andrea Previato, and so is Mohamed Colombo. So what has happened there? And there's a big gap. And there's a big gap between Colombo and Andreasen as well, of about 2 seconds.
There's a yellow flag out.
There.
Yeah, so something must be happening.
Oh, and that was Andrea Previato spinning in the background of shot.
Oh.
Just before we cut away to Jean-Baptiste Thomas getting ahead of Thibaut Texera. We're going to see that overtake come to fruition. Indeed we are. Jean-Baptiste Thomas goes back to the top of the field. And I think surely he must have made a pit stop, because if he was on wets since the start of the race, he would be having the same kind of pace issues that Thibaut Texera is having at the moment. So I think
it would be interesting to see.
Interestingly, look at those windscreens. Wipers are off, and there is a notably darker patch of tarmac starting to appear around the Autodromo Internazionale di Enzo e Dino Ferrari. I'm going to keep on saying it just because I like to show off that I can. But definitely starting to dry out here. Windscreen wipers are not on anywhere, apart from, I guess, when you're in someone's tow, because you need to be able to see, generally.
Yeah.
And Carlo Barberi, since getting ahead of Giacomo Tessera, has really stretched his legs. That gap now 2.3 seconds as Carlo Barberi tries to close down Matteo Bassan, not only his teammate in the virtual world, because they are both driving for Ferrari, but also teammates in, I guess, the other type of virtual world. Carlo Barberi and Matteo Bassan both driving for the same esports team as well. So these guys know each other very well, have raced together a lot before, and it means that they tend to be on relatively similar pace, because they all practice together and develop setups together and whatnot as well.
Leads on to a good point. If you are looking for setups for LMU, BPtuning.net, the sponsor of this series, so go check them out and let us know how you do.
Yeah, indeed. If you're struggling to find a couple of tenths, maybe the couple of tenths that you need to try and pre-qualify when we get around to Season 3, I would absolutely recommend BPTuning.net. Setups handcrafted by Kieran Prendergast, the Season 1 Pro Series winner here at VMS in the LMGT3 class. He makes setups for ACC and for LMU, and you can also get one-on-one coaching with the man himself. So make sure to head over there and check out all of the services that he and the rest of the team at BPTuning.net have on offer.
That was a good segue, wasn't it?
It absolutely was. Matthew Bouquet now, by the way, as we see drivers, this is interesting. So drivers are now seeking out the wet patches. And I think we're going to see drivers attempt to take these wet tyres until there's less than 50 minutes of the race remaining. Once there's less than 50 minutes of the race remaining, these guys know that they can lift and coast their way. They can fuel save a 50-minute stint. So I think these drivers are going to put these wet tyres through very high temperatures and conditions that they really don't want to race in, to try and get below that 50-minute left timer, because then they can make a pit stop and know that they can make it to the end of the race. So I expect that'll be the aim now.
I don't think anyone will want to be doing that final dash at the end just to get that extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes it might be. That could really ruin their race and ruin anything, any potential for a podium or a win even.
Yeah, splash and dash can be really bad. As we look at Eric Nurnemacher, currently in P6, again, didn't set a lap time in qualifying, did Eric Nurnemacher. So he's currently up, that makes it 6 positions he's currently up in this race. So he's having a nice tidy little race as well, looking to get some points on the board to further his campaign at the moment. Outside of the top 3 in each class that get promoted to the gold split for next season, the rest of the top 10 get to retain their seats without having to pre-qualify for Season 3. So that is something that you want to be keeping an eye on. The top 3 in the standings are important, but so are the top 10, because those drivers are the ones who do not have to worry about pre-qualifying against everyone else that will be doing so to try and get a seat in the split that they hope to be in. As we're looking at it now,
especially when this round is an endurance round, the extra points on offer, they want to get as much as they can, extract as much as they can out of this race. If it means they get top 10 just to stay there for the rest of the season, that could be really important for them.
Yeah, as we've seen before, the points difference, the points swing that the endurance races give you can be vital to championships. As we saw in, I believe, the Pro Series last year was decided by the amount of Endurance Cup wins rather than by the amount of sprint race wins. Just swinging the points in favour of the winner of the Pro Series last season. As Matthew Bouquet has closed right up behind Stanislas Pajot now. That gap closing all the time. A yellow flag out on track again, as there seem to be a lot of drivers struggling. And is that because we're now into a similar kind of crossover period that we were earlier? As, whoa, hello. I believe that's Craig Foreman we saw off track as Stanislas Pajot and Matthew Bouquet went past. Indeed it was. Is this now drivers struggling inversely to how they were earlier? It was Carlo Barberi that caused that most recent yellow flag. He's dropped back behind Giacomo Tessera. Do you know who's also off track? Marco Galetti in the background of that shot that we just cut to there. That's Marco Galetti. You can just see coming through to hitting that second apex in the back of the shot. He was also off track on the exit of turn 3. So I think this is now drivers struggling to stay on track on the wet tyres because it's too dry. Whereas earlier they were struggling to stay on track on the dry tyres because it was too wet.
Yeah, it's definitely the crossover point now, and I think drivers are going to start struggling or start shining, I think, in this sort of condition.
Yeah, the crossover between wet and dry is generally where we see drivers who have just raw talent and ability to keep a car pointing in the right direction really shine, because it's crucial that they're able to do so. Andrea Previato in P11, he's working his way back up the field trying to get back up into those points scoring positions. As we just saw, Luciano Icciazzo, who we were just focused on, he's in the points at the moment in LMGT3. It would be his first points of the season. I'm sure he'd be very happy with that result. He's got a little bit of a cushion behind him of about 8 seconds to Juan Viviers, and a little bit of a gap in front of about 3 seconds as well. But Luciano Icciazzo in that Aston Martin would be very, very happy, I'm sure, if the race was ended here and he was able to secure his points for finishing in P10.
Yeah, as we've already said, it's take anything you can at this point. It might be really, really important down the road.
Indeed. Mathieu Bouquet still all over the back of Stanislas Pajot, by the way. That gap, 0.2 of a second at the moment. As Mathieu Bouquet gets the better run out of the first chicane. Is he alongside? I think he's going to have to tuck in behind Stanislas Pajot this time. Indeed he does, but can he get the better run towards Tosa? I don't think the Alpine man can, not this time. He's going to have to stay behind, and there is definitely a dry line that we're seeing on the stream at the moment. That lighter patch now of the racing surface, although it looks darker from some camera angles. Whichever one the contrast is, whether it's lighter or darker, that one's the dry line. And that is what these drivers are sticking on at the moment. They've not really got a choice because it is obviously the racing line as well. But they are seeking those wet patches where and when they can. Oh, as Mathieu Bouquet is going to get stuck behind an LMGT3 here. That's not what he will have wanted. That's going to set him back a little bit from Stanislas Pajot, but he'll make that time back up relatively quickly, one would assume. As we look now again at Andrea Previato, who has closed in quite quickly on Chris Stoltz. That gap now just 0.4 of a second as they come into Variante Alta, and Chris Stoltz is not having a race to remember in that Peugeot. Started in P4, down in P10 at the moment, and looks likely to be knocked out of the points by Andrea Previato here, deep in the first Ravazza from Chris Stoltz. And now he's going to have the Ferrari all over the back of his Peugeot as they roar towards turn 1 here. It's the inside line that then switches back to the outside for Andrea Previato, who appears to have the overspeed. Indeed he does, but is Chris Stoltz going to hang on the inside? He does, he's still there. There's racing room left. Good racing from these guys as Andrea Previato gets that move done. Just squeezing Chris Stoltz on the exit of turn 2 in towards turn 3 and into the points for Andrea Previato after his spin that may have been related to what was going on with the battle with Mohamed Colombo. And
yeah, really good move there, but important for Andrea Previato to get back into the points where he belongs and where he started off at the start of the race. So good progress for him.
Yeah, for sure. It is a little bit of a bigger gap in front now. It's, what's that, 7 or 8 seconds to get back up to where Philip Schlichting is to continue that fight up the order, but I expect he will aim to do that as much as possible. And now, Mattia Previato's in the pit lane and he's switching to slick tyres. So from 14th, last on track in the hypercars, he is the first man to make the call to switch to the slick tyres. He's on pit lane at the moment, but we are watching the battle as Mathieu Bouquet has gotten past Stanislas Pajot for P4. That is Mathieu Bouquet now, although he has to cut over the apex of turn 2. And is that going to give Stanislas Pajot a chance? Is it going to give Stanislas Pajot the run in towards turns 4 and 5? I don't think it quite is for the Toyota man, and they've got to watch out because who's that lurking behind? Carving through what would have been missed about 10 minutes ago because of the rain, but is now quite clear. That's Mohamed Colombo.
Yep.
Looking to continue his climb up the grid. From 14th, he's gained 6 positions. He's looking to possibly turn that into 7, maybe even 8 if he can get ahead of Mathieu Bouquet.
Really insightful stuff for him. I'm sure he'll be really pleased with whatever result he can get, as long as he continues to race throughout the rest of this race for certain, yeah, anything would be great for him at this point.
I mean, he just, surely for Mohamed Colombo, priority number one is just to get some points on the board. Finish the race, it doesn't really matter where, but I mean, when you see cars in front of you and when you see that you've been gaining on them, that does come to the front of the mind. It'll be interesting, none of the other hypercars choosing to box as of yet. And this is something we're going to be keeping our eyes on now. Paolo Ortu pits. He's the first of the top 10 to make the call. He comes in from what was P8. Also in, I believe that is one of the LMGT3s it must be. It's Luciano Achazzo is also in the pit lane. And out of the pit lane already. Luciano Achazzo getting rolling. I believe that'll now be on slick tyres. Surely it's got to be, with the track and the condition it's in at the moment. But Paolo Ortu is the first man to make the call in the top 10 of the hypercars. As we're looking now at Matteo Bassan catching Johan Evora. Possibly. Does Matteo Bassan pit this time? Does he have to wait? He can't get down pit road because Johan Evora was on the inside of him. It's Mohamed Colombo's all over the road trying to get past Stanislas Pajot. And yet again, a yellow flag, I think, signalling that we are now deep into the overlap point for these tyres. And Stefan Köhler's in the pit lane. Mohamed Colombo's all over the gravel on the outside of Variante Alta. Maybe just needs to cool off a little bit, as that is Giacomo Teixeira into the pit lane. He's the first of the top 3 to come in, and he's followed by Mark Warmington, who was P7, is still P7 at the moment in the LMGT3 class. But Giacomo Teixeira making the call. He thinks it's time for the slicks. He thinks he's going to be able to gain possibly on the top 2 by making that call. He's got to hope he doesn't come out in traffic.
Yeah, the worst thing to ever happen will be come out in traffic, slow yourself down, especially with the added fuel that you might have added, new tyres. It will just make you not the greatest and not the most competitive at that point.
Indeed. As Stanislas Pajot is still trying to get back within a second. It's Jean-Baptiste Thomas that we're looking at the moment, though. The leader in LMGT3. When does he make the call to come into the pit lane? At the moment, it's Sarah and Schlichting both on pit road in the hypercars. Moving on to the mediums, as have Ortu and Mattia Previato. I don't know. I feel like looking at how much the cars are moving around, it's got to be the right call. But yeah, you've got to think there's a reason that Matteo Bassan is doing another lap. So is Carlo Barberi might be in this time. We'll wait and see. Carlo Barberi isn't in. Johan Evora is. I mean, when then is the decision to pit for the guys at the front? Because it's got to be soon, as that's a broken down. Is that a broken down Mustang? Frank Van Ginneken moving very slowly, coming down the front stretch. I'm not sure what's happened there. It looks like he's come to a complete stop on the front stretch and is now slowly getting rolling again. As someone cuts the inside of turn 2, that's Thibaut Teixeira, possibly Craig Foreman. Craig Foreman, I believe it was. I'm not sure what's happened there. Stanislas Pajot, by the way, we're just going to hop back to the hypercar battles quickly, as Pajot, Colombo and Rasmus Andreasen are all in the pit lane. They are all on pit road, switching to those medium tyres. I believe it'll be to the end of the race here. But Matteo Bassan and Carlo Barberi still out on track. Maybe they're thinking that the time that they lose on the wet tyres now, they can gain back by having to put in less fuel, less virtual energy.
The longer that they go, yeah, they will have to take on less energy for the rest of the race, but you're running into the area where you might risk it too much. How long can you actually go until you must pit?
it will certainly be interesting to see, because I'm not sure how much time you'll gain from having less virtual energy and fuel to put in the car, and I'm not sure if it's going to be enough to cancel out the amount of time you've got to think that they're losing at the moment. Let's have a little look. I'm just going to do a little bit of investigation, utilising, we'll go for Mattia Previato. He's been on the medium tyres the longest. And at the moment, they're still, Mattia Previato still 3 seconds a lap slower. That might be down to damage. Sorry, a second a lap slower at the moment. Maybe Paolo Ortu is a better representative. I think those medium tyres might be struggling to warm up at the moment on the hypercars. Which of course is an issue that they have. Even in the dry they struggle, as Johan Avora is forced off track there by the battle between Chris Stoltz, I believe that was, oh no, it might have been Giacomo Teixeira, just ahead of Carlo Barberi. So Giacomo Teixeira is holding up at the moment the driver who is the on strategy is the position behind him, and on track is currently behind him. Giacomo Teixeira, I think, actually possibly not holding Carlo Barberi up. I think he might have moved past Carlo Barberi and is now doing better than him, as yet again a yellow flag pops up. I'm not going to be able to tell you who that is, to be entirely honest. As Andrea Previato also on pit lane, so Stefan Köhler. Eduardo Doritos made a pit stop. There are people pitting left, right and centre at the moment. As yeah, I think that is Giacomo Teixeira is comfortably staying ahead of Carlo Barberi at the moment. That gap is not being closed. So I think maybe now is the time to have switched onto those medium tyres, although through the apex of Tosa there, Carlo Barberi certainly did close in. And Giacomo Teixeira is going to have to be careful he doesn't fall foul of the blue flag rules there.
Definitely these blue flags are going to be important, but if they can keep with it and just let them go with when they need to go, it will definitely keep them away from any penalties.
Though that gap, again, it does somewhat widen through some corners and close through others. Matteo Bassan, again, making the choice to stay out, I believe. Indeed he does. Still seeking the wetter parts of the track, but even the wetter parts of the track aren't particularly wet anymore. Matteo Bassan is now with a 22-second lead over teammate, again, both virtually for their team and in terms of both driving the Ferrari. He's well ahead as Jean-Baptiste Thomas pulls the pin from the very lead. You just saw him there, the Corvette on the inside, into the pit lane from the lead of the LMGT3 class. But we're watching Mohamed Colombo as he looks to get past the inverse colour scheme of the car that he's in. Black number 7 Toyota trying to get past the white version of this car, the Fuji edition version of this car with those beautiful blossoms on the front. And whoa, Peugeot is wide. Mohamed Colombo is through. That is for P7 at the moment, but I believe that both of these guys are on dry tyres, so there could be more positions coming based on who ahead of them still has to pit, who hasn't pit, etc, etc, as it looks like possibly those slick tyres are starting to work in their favour. I tell you who will let us know if that is the case. If we can jump to Giacomo Teixeira and see what his gap is back to Carlo Barberi. Those are the two closest cars on pace who are now on alternating tyres, and it looks like Giacomo Teixeira is now stable with that gap, if not slightly pulling away. So you've got to think now, surely it's getting towards the time. And Matteo Bassan, I was just about to say, surely it's getting towards the time that they need to pit. Matteo Bassan comes into the pit lane. And I'm sure that means that Carlo Barberi will follow. Indeed he does. The top two now into the pits. as that is Jean-Baptiste Thomas struggling slightly through turns 1, 2 and 3. Just trying to get those medium tyres warmed up. As you can see, that's those little jinks to the left and the right. That's not any sort of lag or disconnection issues. That is Jean-Baptiste Thomas just soaring the wheel a little bit, trying not to put any kind of angular momentum on the tyres so that he doesn't wear them out, but just trying to get a little bit of heat into them by just leaning on them ever so slightly in a straight line. Davide Canton into pits from what is currently P2 as well. Matthew Bouquet is into the pits as well, and you've got to think surely that Chris Stoltz has to come in this time as well. Chris Stoltz does indeed come in.
It's coming to the end of sort of the window that these guys could last on track without stopping. So these guys will need to come in pretty soon and get that stop done, and then get back out on track and get going.
Indeed. Even just thinking about the fuel number, obviously you can be slightly more fuel efficient in the rain because you spend less time at full throttle, and you tend to accelerate less and lift and brake more. So this is possibly just a fuel necessity, but also I think those slick tyres are now proving to be the faster ones to be on. As Matteo Bassan is out of the pit lane already, it's really Giacomo Tessero we want to be looking at, but he's only just coming down the front straight. And he's going to be a decent chunk, 7 seconds behind Carlo Barberi now. That is not what Giacomo Tessero will have been looking for at all, as there's another yellow flag out on track.
That's a pretty big gap, and it wasn't that big when he came into the pit, so...
But look at how rapidly it's shrinking. It's down to below 5 already. Those warm tyres on that Peugeot are going to be doing absolute bits for Giacomo Tessero at the moment. The gap's below 4 seconds now. It's only been 2 corners since it was below 5. This gap is rapidly closing for Giacomo Tessero. His warm tyres really helping compared to the relatively cold tyres on the Carlo Barberi's Ferrari, as Galetti's the last of the leaders in LMGT3 to make his stop as well. He'll be looking to come out ahead of Jean-Baptiste Thomas, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to. Big hops over the curbs for Giacomo Tessero now. I believe we are looking at Jean-Baptiste Thomas. Indeed we are. He's coming down now just to the very top of the track, very anti-alta, coming down towards the Ravazzas. Is he going to be able to get out ahead of Marco Galetti? That is the Aston Martin that we just cut to on pit road. This is for the lead of the race. Jean-Baptiste Thomas has the advantage of having warm tyres. Marco Galetti does not have those. Craig Foreman, by the way, has DNF'd whilst all of this strategy stuff has been going on. Craig Foreman DNF'd. Marco Galetti is looking to get to the lead. Very opposite ways that their races are going, but I don't think he's going to be able to. I think Jean-Baptiste Thomas is going to get ahead. Indeed he does. We don't quite manage to see the Aston Martin in the back of shot, but Jean-Baptiste Thomas is ahead of Marco Galetti as they were before the pit stops. And that gap is going to grow whilst those tyres get some temperature into them in the hands of Marco Galetti. But if we could quickly hop up, Giacomo Tessero is back within a second of Carlo Barberi already. In fact, he's currently just about within half a second of Carlo Barberi. Is there going to be a move here from Giacomo Tessero? He's closing rapidly on that Ferrari driver at the moment. That switch to the medium tyres clearly throwing off Carlo Barberi a little bit, still trying to get them into their fully operational window, whilst trying to hold off Giacomo Tessero. He was P2 before the stop, so I expect he would quite like to be back there again. And we see an inverse of what was going on earlier. Giacomo Tessero almost pushing Carlo Barberi through the corners this time.
Seems like it's just done the opposite this time, and these guys back at it again for this final. Well, it's not the final.
Ooh. Massive lockup. And Giacomo Teixeira there, I don't expect will be too pleased with how much he was squeezed. Indeed he wasn't. Look at that, the flash of the lights, again, the universal signal for I'm not too happy with whatever just happened between us. And Giacomo Teixeira making use of that of that driver's language at the moment. But now we look back, Mohamed Colombo in P5, he's already scoring a nice little bundle of points, more points than he's scored so far this season. But he's hungry, and he's got Mathieu Bouquet in his crosshairs at the moment. Whoa! Almost caught out by the LMGT3 at the front of the train there. Mathieu Bouquet was slower than he was expecting. Mohamed Colombo had a little bit of a lock-up. Can he get past Mathieu Bouquet now? I don't think he's going to be able to. The Frenchman holds on in the Alpine through Variante Alta, but Mohamed Colombo is all over the back of him right now. The Toyota driver looking to get this move done for P4. It would be the highest he has been in any BPTuning Contender Series Silver Split race so far this season, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get it done. With just about 30 minutes left in this race, there is still time for Mohamed Colombo. He doesn't have to make this move rash. He can think about it, he can take some time, work out where he's stronger. Yellow flag out momentarily, someone having a little off-track excursion, but has managed to get it recovered pretty quickly. And Giacomo Teixeira has burnt through the best of his tyres by the looks of things, the best of his tyre advantage as well, and is now 4.5 seconds back from Carlo Barberi. Thankfully, that is not a position that Giacomo Teixeira needs to gain, because, as I've already explained, Carlo Barberi as a reserve driver will not be showing on the final results, as Philipp Schlichting is getting chased by Andrea Previato at the moment. Philipp Schlichting in 8th, Andrea Previato in 9th, looking to get himself up the order a little bit. And there he is, Andrea Previato just behind Juan Viviers, that gap only just over a second at the moment. And Andrea Previato looking to continue his run back up the field after that suspected run-in between him and possibly Mohamed Colombo or Rasmus Andreasen during their squabble earlier on in the race.
Into these closing moments of the race now, just over 30 minutes left of this race to go, and it's still looking very, very tight. Matteo Bassan still needs to pit, am I right?
No, Matteo Bassan has made his pit stop. He is just that far ahead. His pace has been absolutely ludicrous this race, as that's Stefan Köhler having an issue. And DNF for Stefan Köhler, that's him out of the race, the Alpine man, unfortunately. The cause of the most recent yellow flag. He's had to DNF back to the garage for him, and there's yet another yellow flag as drivers appear to be having some real issues. We're still in these kind of weird changeable conditions where if you go too far off the side of the kind of strip of dry track, your slick tyres suddenly become somewhat less useful than they were before. As we look now at Juan Viviers, and I believe that's Luciano Icciazzo we're looking at the moment, who is still just inside that top 10 and has a really big gap behind, 1.5 minutes to the next car behind Luciano Icciazzo. So he is pretty much guaranteed to finishing the points of this stage, which he would be, I'm sure, really, really happy with. and Luciano Chatso just managing to keep it on track very nicely at the moment. We are looking, though, at the battle, which again is trying to get lit up between Mohamed Colombo and Mathieu Bouquet. Mohamed Colombo just trying to close back underneath that second gap. Not having much success as things stand, but he is kind of taking a 10th out here and there. Not really enough to make a meaningful move back inside a second. So this could be very difficult. Now hopping over to look at Eduardo Dorito, and that is Mark Warmington. We got the cameras on at the moment, hunting down Eduardo Dorito, who's in that that slightly crumbled number 55 Ferrari ahead of him. I couldn't quite work out which livery it was on that car, because when it crumples like that, the front end gets quite dark, as we've got another yellow flag out on track at the moment. Just drivers really struggling to keep things pointed in a straight line at the moment. Looking now again, Philip Schlichting and Andrea Previato. Andrea Previato is inside a second of Philip Schlichting at the moment. Andrea still trying to move his way further up the grid after his issues earlier on in the race. And those Ferraris, both number 51 cars, almost looked like one as they came over the top of the hill there. Andrea Previato firmly and perfectly in the train tracks of Philip Schlichting ahead. And as we move now, we're almost inside the final 25 minutes of the race. Mohamed Colombo is trying to get back on level terms with Mathieu Bouquet. He is within a second now. I believe Mathieu Bouquet possibly held up a little bit by the Aston Martin just in the background there of Marco Galetti. And we see those rear brake discs glowing, as we do on all of these hypercars. But just not quite enough for Mohamed Colombo at the moment. He is still within a second, but he needs to find just a little bit more in his pace at the moment if he wants to get to and then past Mathieu Bouquet. Because at the moment these two drivers very, very evenly matched, and Mohamed Colombo is going to lose out here behind the leader of the LMGT3 class, Jean-Baptiste Thomas. Indeed he does. That gap now back over a second as we look at Philip Schlichting and Andrea Previato yet again. These two now incredibly close. Andrea Previato behind Philip Schlichting. And is there going to be a move here? Not into Variante Alta. No, it was into Variante Alta, sorry. I've got my drivers mixed up. Andrea Previato is now ahead of Philip Schlichting. It's up to P8 for Andrea Previato. The move happening through the exit of Acqua Minerale. Very good move for Andrea Previato. He's going to be very happy that he's managed to get ahead there, as Thibaut Texera and Eric Nonemaker now appear to be relatively close on track. Indeed they are. Eric Nonemaker looking to not only score his first points of the season, but to possibly come home in P4 in class, which from having not set a qualifying time would be very, very good for him. That gap just half a second between him and Thibaut Texera at the moment. Just not quite enough at the moment. Chris Stoltz is trying to get back up the order as well, as we cut back to the LMGT3 battle between Texera and Nonamaka. Nonamaka closing in through the apexes. That gap now 0.2 of a second, 2.5 tenths of a second, that Eric Nonamaka is behind. He's going to be looking to try and get ahead, you would think, of Thibaut Texera sooner rather than later. Just trying to outplay the BMW, outsmart the BMW, just gain a little bit here and there, as we see the characteristic wiggle under braking from the LMGT3s as they try to balance on just on the edge of turning on their ABS. But just not quite enough pace in the tank from Eric Nonamaka at the moment. Though he is getting ever closer. Oh! And they're almost hit by Paolo Ortu, the hypercar, trying to get around the pair of them, and almost runs into the back of Eric Nonamaka. That would have been Ferrari on Ferrari violence, something that endurance racing fans across the world are relatively familiar with by this point. It always seems that the Ferraris manage to have contact with each other, as Eric Nonamaka goes almost for the move around the outside. He does go for the move around the outside, turns into the inside. There's a little bit of door bumping between him and Thibaut Texera. Eric Nonamaka now around the outside at Tosa. I don't expect there's going to be room left there, and Eric Nonamaka goes almost all the way around. And again, that is just slick tyres on the wet part of the track. Something that we see time and time again as we now look to Stanislas Pajot, and I believe that's Rasmus Andreasen behind him. Indeed it is. And Stanislas Pajot is going to have to try and hold off the Ferrari car, the Ferrari driver behind him, for 22 minutes. That is a long, long ask. Nothing going at the moment for Rasmus Andreasen. He's tucked right under the rear wing of Stanislas Pajot. But just can't quite get close enough for a move. It could be now, though. Could it be now for Rasmus Andreasen? I don't think he's alongside Stanislas Pajot. Through Variante Alta, he has to let the move go. But this is now the closest he's been to the back end of that white number 7 Toyota, as we kick ever steadily towards the 20-minute remaining mark. Could this be the time for Rasmus Andreasen to make his move? He'll slot back into the tow now that they've got him past, I believe that was Eduardo Dorito. But I don't think it'll be enough of a tow down towards turn 1 to make a move happen for Rasmus. Indeed it's not. He has to stay behind just for now. But I'm sure that won't be the last that we see from this battle. Indeed it won't. Both of them a little bit wide out of turn 3. Rasmus Andreasen now right back behind Stanislas Pajot, gaining on him in the braking zones, looking to get the better exits, but that time it's not quite worked for him. Onto the wet stuff on the outside of Tosa. And we've got yet another yellow flag. Not sure who it was that caused that one. It looks like everyone has managed to relatively get away with it. Can't see anyone drastically losing time. As we cut back to Thibaut Texera and Eric Nonamaka, as Nonamaka now just 0.6 of a second behind. Still stuck behind Thibaut Texera. Is there going to be a move on the cards for the Ferrari man? P4 would be very, very nice for him in this race, I'm sure. just not quite enough at the moment. Back to Stanislav Pajot, we switch back to the LMGT3 battle, sorry, straight away. They come sweeping down towards Acca Minerale. Back to the hypercars though, it's Stanislav Pajot and Rasmus Andreasen still hounding all over the back of Stanislav Pajot in that white Toyota, trying to get a move done for what would be P6 and a very nice haul of points for whichever driver does end up finishing there. I do expect it'll be one of these two, as they've got a decent gap behind and a gap ahead. Although that gap ahead, and don't quote me on this, but that gap ahead might be closing to Mohamed Colombo. I think it is. If it is, it's only slow and steady. But that black Toyota that just appeared in the front of shot there, at the very, very front of shot, going through Ravazza 1, seems to be getting ever closer. And I think it is. And Mohamed Colombo's...
now. Sorry.
No, don't worry.
Yeah, under 20 minutes now. It's getting to the interesting part of the race. These final battles on track going to be evolving and solidifying themselves. But some really good battles on in GT3 and in Hypercar.
Eric Nonamaka really, really close behind. Thibaut Texera has to let the hypercar through. And that widens that gap yet again. The ever-present bane of multi-class racing is that just when you think you've got nice and close to the car ahead of you and might be able to look at starting to set up an overtake, you come across, or traffic comes across you, depending on which class you're in. And all of that hard work is somewhat undone by lapping or being lapped.
Absolutely, as they say, traffic giveth, traffic taketh. It's just an art. It's a complex which every driver has to go through, and it's just making sure that you can, as we mentioned earlier in the program, just be patient, look out for those moves where it is possible, take advantage of traffic if you can, but also sometimes it will disadvantage you, and that's when it gets frustrating for the drivers, especially when they're fighting for these, P4, P5 positions.
Yeah, indeed. And Rasmus Andreasen surely is starting to get a little bit bored of staring at the back of that white Toyota, you would think. He appears to have been sat there looking for quite a while. And it must, I mean, it's got to start getting pretty frustrating just be looking at the rear end of the same car, just lap after lap after lap. It's got to get pretty frustrating for Rasmus Andreasen. Although a mistake from Stanislav Pajot there, just going wide through the middle part of Acca Minerale, and could that be the little glimmer? Could that little mistake be the start of a larger downfall, as yet again the camera will cut here and you'll see possibly the Toyota of Mohamed Colombo. I don't think you'll quite see him, but the Toyota of Mohamed Colombo is now much, much closer than it has been at any other point of this race. There he is. He's only 2.5, 3 seconds ahead of Stanislav Pajot at the moment. These guys, Stanislav Pajot and Rasmus Andreasen, have gained a second on him in the last 2 laps. And I know that doesn't sound like much. It's only about half a second a lap. But that would mean that they could be with him in 6 laps time, and we're going to get quite easily 6 laps out of the rest of this race, probably closer to probably 8 or possibly even 9. So Mohamed Colombo is going to have to start looking over his shoulder and make sure that he's not leaving any time on the table. Right as I say that, he gets stuck behind a BMW all the way through the apex of Tosa. Although Stanislas Pajot and Rasmus Andreasen have also been caught by that same BMW just coming in towards Acca Minerali. But that gap is very close. In fact, it's closing more and more. Now below 2 seconds is that gap. Between Mohamed Colombo and Stanislas Pajot. And I'm sure that Mohamed Colombo does not want to have to give up that 5th place. It would be his best result so far and his best points total so far after 2 somewhat disappointing races in Sebring and Portimao.
Dorito and Mark Wilmington closing in on another battle for 7th and 8th in LMGT3. Mark Wilmington in the Inception Racing McLaren 720S LMGT3, just catching that Ferrari off Eduardo Dorito. Ferrari Hypercar just battling through them at the moment. But Mark Wilmington hoping for a better result, as he has had a few unfortunate results in the past few races.
Yeah, I think just points on the board would be a good result for Mark Wilmington at the moment. He's certainly not had the start to the season that he would have hoped for. But just some points on the board, no matter how many, is going to be the kind of result he would have been looking for. As I just wanted to say that Stanislas Pajot did have a moment at the very start of this lap. He ran through the gravel on the apex of turn 2, in that first little section at the very start of the lap. Had to run through the gravel. Has managed to not lose too much time to Mohamed Colombo, but it's given the other Toyota just a little bit more breathing room. I tell you who it's not given breathing room is Stanislas Pajot himself, who's having to massively defend from Rasmus Andreasen. Is he alongside in the second of Ravazza? It was very close. That was some proper side-by-side racing there. Stanislas Pajot leaving the absolute minimum amount of room, and Rasmus Andreasen managing to not have contact with him there, but he's now all over the back of Stanislas Pajot for P6. Surely not around the outside at the very start of the lap here. Indeed it's not, but he might be able to get a little triple switchback manoeuvre set up and get the run towards turns 4, 5 and 6. Tell you what, if you want to see a masterclass in defensive driving, I would say that Stanislas Pajot in the last half a lap has been absolutely that. Sitting on the apexes, managing perfectly to cover off any switchbacks that Rasmus Andreasen might be looking to get on him. And all that this battling does at the moment is give Mohamed Colombo extra breathing room to not have to worry about possibly losing his 5th position as we close in on the final 10 minutes of this race.
I was going to say, Mohamed Colombo will be absolutely riveted about this battle behind him for P6 and P7. Rasmus Andreasen just catching to the back of Pajot now and letting Colombo get away. But we're watching here Texera and Nonamaker closing in a little bit. Nonamaker at the end here, so let's see if he can get on to that 4th step in the Ferrari from GR Racing. But Texera has had a very good race. He did lead some bits, didn't he? In the earlier period.
Texera did lead for a little bit, I believe. Yeah, he did lead a little bit earlier on. So he'll really be wanting to hold on to his P4. And I tell you who else, that battle between Mark Wilmington and Eduardo Dorito is relatively close as well. So we're going to have 3 battles to be keeping our eye on as we close in on the final 10 minutes of this race. We're now less than 10 minutes to go, in fact. So 3 battles, 2 in LMGT3 and 1 in Hypercar. So there is plenty of action still to come from this race, even though there's only 9 minutes of it left, as Mark Wilmington closes in on Eduardo Dorito. That gap just 0.3 of a second. And in fact, they're about to be passed by our hypercar battle. That's Stanislas Pajot and Rasmus Andreasen going past, possibly forcing Eduardo Dorito wide. Could there be a move here for Mark Warmington? It's not quite going to happen through the apex of Acca Minerale, but he's now closer than he ever has been. That gap just a tenth of a second. Mark Warmington looks to the outside. That's covered off by Eduardo Dorito. The battle between Stanislas Pajot and Rasmus Andreasen also raging ahead. They're behind what appears to be Mohamed Colombo. That's Mohamed Colombo. Colombo's had an off. I'm not sure where, but he's dropped 2 seconds and is now right in front of Stanislas Pajot. This is now going to be a three-way fight to the end for what is P5 overall and in the hypercar class, as that was someone having to come into the pit lane. That was Mattia Proviato. Mark Warmington all over the back of Eduardo Dorito. That McLaren looks pretty slippy in a straight line. In fact, is he going to try and go around the outside, Mark Warmington? That would be very brave. No, he can't. He can't go around the outside. It's massive contact between the two. Mark Warmington's off. So is, I believe, Eduardo Dorito. He's managed to keep it somewhat on track. Mark Warmington, I think, might have come out of that ahead, has he? No, he has come out of it behind. I'm not sure what happened there. Looked like Mark Warmington tried to go to the outside and the move was covered off, but it was too late for Mark to change his line and to change his braking zone. And I think he just got it locked up on the curbing on the outside, and it was sideways into Eduardo Dorito. That was a heart-in-mouth moment. As this battle now, three-way battle, as I said, for P5, is raging on. Stanislas Pajot looking to get ahead of Mohamed Colombo, Rasmus Andreasen looking to get ahead of the both of them, and Mohamed Colombo hoping, I would expect, that Rasmus Andreasen and Stanislas Pajot have their own little battle and drop back away from him again, because he would quite like to hold on to that 5th place, as that is Eric Nonemaker trying to make a move on the inside of Thibaut Texera. He runs a little bit deep, and almost contact. That's Filippo Cogolo and I believe Chris Stoltz coming past them, possibly actually Giacomo Tessera, I think it is, because he's still flashing his lights, but almost contact as the BMW hypercar tried to lap the two fighting LMGT3s there. And Luciano Uchazzo and Juan Viviers also having a little bit of a scrap. I tell you what, Luciano Uchazzo has managed to get ahead of Juan Viviers there. He's almost hit by Juan Viviers. He's almost hit by Paolo Ortu. And oh my days, it is all kicking off in the final 10 minutes of this race and round. Paolo Ortu's round, so's Juan Viviers through Ravazza 2. That's a lapping move gone wrong from Paolo Ortu. We'll have to dissect that after the race. I'm sure it'll be reported. But Paolo Ortu's going to lose a position here. Possibly. I don't think that's actually a car for position behind him. No, it's not. Chris Stoltz is a long way behind, a whole lap down on Paolo Ortu. But this battle for 5th is alive and well. Oh, a little bit of contact there between Stanislas Pajot and Mohamed Colombo, and this is absolutely ludicrous. 5 minutes to go, and the battles are everywhere, and so's the contact. Absolutely ridiculous. And meanwhile, we've got Eric Nonemaker still all over the back of Thibaut Texera, looking to get ahead of that BMW one more time. But can there be a move there? I don't know. You've got to say, surely, that it feels like it's going to be a little bit of a last-ditch effort from Eric Nonemaker if it were to happen. And that three-way battle for P5, by the way, has quite rapidly turned into a 4-way battle for P5, because that last Ferrari you see hooked on the end is Andrea Previato. He's managed to catch up to this whole train, and it's now 4 cars covered by just about a second. And this is... I have a funny feeling that this might get a little bit silly, as we are now below the 5-minute mark. And Andrea Previato looks for a move on Rasmus Andreasen. Andreasen has that covered off all the way. And this is absolutely ridiculous. So many laps of racing. It's going to be 61 laps by the time that this race is finished. 61 laps of racing. And it has come alive in the final minutes. 4-way battle for P5 in Hypercar. There's still a battle, 2 battles in fact, raging on in LMGT3, courtesy of Eric Nonemaker and Mark Warmington, trying to get past Thibaut Texera and Eduardo Dorito, respectively. So 6 cars, 8 cars in fact, currently involved in on-track battles. Rasmus Andreasen is sat in the middle of this one. He's the first of 2 Ferraris trying to get past the second of the 2 Toyotas. As Mark Warmington is going to be able to get past Eduardo Dorito here. Is he? That's up the hill. He's going to be on the outside, is Mark Warmington, into turn 7. It's not where you want to be, but he might be able to make it work. There's more contact and they're both round. They're both round. There's contact between the 2. Eduardo Dorito is going to try and get back on track, but Mark Warmington, I think, is going to walk away with the position here. Is he letting Eduardo Dorito having it back? I don't think he is. I think Mark Warmington thinks that he deserves to keep that position, and he's going to. Although Eduardo Dorito does get it back, possibly now. The 4-way battle for P5 in the hypercars hasn't slowed down either. Andrea Previato moving ahead of Rasmus Andreasen now for P7, although Rasmus Andreasen tries to get it back on the inside. There's contact between the 2. A little bit of side-by-side, some door banging. Neither of them too happy with the other by the looks of things. Lots of door banging coming up the hill there. And Rasmus Andreasen, I think, has conceded to Andrea Previato now. Although Previato is not going to be happy about that. That drops him more than a second back from Stanislas Pajot. And with only 2.5 minutes of this race remaining, and plus whatever laps, plus whatever, if there is an extra lap after that, we will have to wait and see. That is not what you want to have. You don't want to be losing time. You want to be gaining. Although thankfully Stanislas Pajot, trapped behind Mohamed Colombo, has made some has dropped some time back again. And Mark Warmington still trying to get back past Eduardo Dorito. These 2 now have had multiple contacts, 3 at least by my count, if not 4. Not the best of friends on track. Whoa. So here we go. Andrea Previato now has the slipstream of both the Toyotas in front of him. Is he looking for a move? It would be brave. He's not. Stanislas Pajot covers it off on the inside. These 4 drivers absolutely glued together at the moment. And with 1:33 left to go, we are going to get a 61st lap here. Matteo Bassan coming towards the Ravazzas. There won't be a 62nd. So these drivers will have 1 more lap after this, 1 more tour through all of these corners to try and sort themselves out, to get in the order that they believe they deserve to be in before this race finishes. Andrea Previato just jumping out of the line there, trying to put off Stanislas Pajot, get in his mirrors, let him know that he's there. If he can distract Pajot just at the right time, there's a chance he'll miss a braking zone, possibly lock a brake, and that'll be all the advantage he needs as Mark Warmington looks to get past Eduardo Dorito again. That's not going to happen. And as the clock ticks down, 20 seconds left remaining at the moment, there is still this battle in the hypercar class, alive and well. Mohamed Colombo still managing to lead the way. He'll be very happy if he can just get through the rest of this lap in P5. It will be his best result of the season, his best points of the season, if I remember correctly, possibly even his first points of the season, which he will be very, very happy with indeed. He's managing to just pull a little bit of a larger gap on Stanislas Pajot at the moment. And Mohamed Colombo looks like he's going to be able to make this happen. Matteo Bassan has crossed the line. He is the winner in the Ferrari here at Imola. It's Carlo Barberi, his teammate, who will take second on the road, but he will not show up on the standings as he's a reserve driver. Then it's Giacomo Tessera in P3, and then we cut to Mathieu Bouquet in P4, but then the battle that we still have raging on in the background, Mohamed Colombo is at the lead of that battle. It's going to be close between Pajot and Previato. Is there going to be a last-ditch move from Andrea Previato? Not quite. I don't think he's going to be able to get the overlap. Will he fire it into the apex? He does try to. A little bit of contact with Stanislas Pajot, but he's going to come out on top. And Stanislas Pajot is going to take P6 on the road, P7 for Andrea Previato, P8 for Rasmus Andreasen. It was Jean-Baptiste Thomas who took the win right all at the same time there as they all crossed the line. Jean-Baptiste Thomas took the win in LMGT3. Then it's going to be Philip Schlichting in P9 in the hypercar class, Paolo Ortu in P10. Chris Stoltz in 11th, Cogolo in 12th, Previato in 13th, Perler in 14th, and Deschamps in 15th, the last two not finishing the race. In LMGT3, it was Jean-Baptiste Thomas, then Marco Galetti, then Davide Canton in third. Thibaut Texera holds on to fourth ahead of Eric Nonamaker in P5. Then it was Johan Evora scoring points in the Porsche. You'll be happy with that result, ahead of Eduardo Dorito, who did finish the race in front of Mark Warmington. Luciano Chatso in 9th scores his first points of the season ahead of Juan Viviers, who rounds out the top 10. Frank Van Ginneken finishes 11th in class, and then behind him were the two DNFs in the Hypercar class, in the LMGT3 class, which were Craig Foreman and Christoph Rappel. And that sums up the race here tonight. I mean, an absolutely crazy race as well. It was very, very action-packed. And we do have at least one driver already waiting for us in the interview room. So let's look at getting Rasmus Andreasen. Let's get him in, shall we? Rasmus Andreasen, of course, was part of that those final lap battles in the hypercars that went from being just him and Stanislas Pajot to suddenly being him, Stanislas Pajot, and Mohamed Colombo. And then before he knew it, he had Andrea Previato behind him as well. Rasmus, the last 20 minutes of that race for you, I can imagine, were pretty intense.
Yes, the short answer is yes, and the long answer is frustrating. Struggling quite a bit in the wet, but as soon as the track dried up, the car kind of came alive. But I got stuck behind the Toyota. I just couldn't find a way past.
Yeah, I did say on the stream. I'm not sure if you had the stream in the background or not. I did say on the stream that you must be getting pretty annoyed of looking at the back of the same Toyota for yet another lap. It felt like you were behind him for quite a while.
I was indeed. It just had a tiny bit more straight line speed. I could get a better exit, but I almost didn't gain anything, even though I was in the slipstream. So there was at one point in the last corner I got onto his on the inside, but I just didn't have straight line speed to make the move stick at all. So it was just super frustrating pushing him around the track. Slight love tap at some point in the hairpin, but yeah, frustrating. And the result does not reflect the pace I felt today.
Yeah, absolutely. Must be a nice feeling, though, to be back inside the points again. Obviously, P2 at the first round in Sebring, but then just outside the points in 11th after the race in Portimao. So it must be a nice feeling to be back in the points, and obviously the bonus being that as one of the endurance rounds, there is a slight bump to the points that you've made from this one.
Indeed. I still want to get back to my Sebring results, of course. Portimao did finish ahead, but I had a post-race penalty. Don't want to discuss that. But yeah, at least I take some positive from this race, that it seems like I get hang on the Ferrari again in sometimes, but I need to find the last percentage. I knew I lacked a bit of pace, but I'm working. It's going in the right direction. So hopefully I can soon give Matteo some challenge up ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to round number 4. We're at Spa for the sprint race next. Do you think Spa's a track where you're going to be able to be strong on pace yet again, or is it one where you might struggle a little bit more?
Yes, I will say so. Spa is my personal favorite track in the world. So yeah, I would, and I usually perform quite decent there. So yeah, I expect to be up there.
Oh, that's good to hear. I wish you the best of luck for Spa in 2 weeks' time, Rasmus. Have a good one.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye. And now, the only other driver that we've got waiting for us at the moment is a man who I'm sure is going to be absolutely over the moon with the result from this race. Jean-Baptiste Thomas, in one of only 2 Corvettes in the BPTuning Contender Series Silver Split, takes home the win for 38 points provisionally here in Imola. Jean-Baptiste, I mean, you must be beaming right now. The grin on your face must be absolutely huge.
Yeah. I'm pretty happy for this win, and I don't know what we said. I have a pace on this race for all the race. I have the pace, and I'm pretty happy of that.
Indeed. And 2, at the start of the race, I was just wondering, did you have a drive-through at the start of the race?
No drive-through for this race. But yeah, I pit early for the wet tire, and I know all these conditions on the ultimate, so I pit early and I hoping for the rain.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, and I'm sure Charlie will agree with me here, that you made 2 absolutely flawless strategy calls in the race today. The early pit stop onto the wet tyres meant that you avoided all of the slip and slide that everyone else was struggling with. But it also meant that you had the absolute pace advantage over those who had started on the wet tyres. And then it seems like, again, in that transition to the dry, you were in there at exactly the right time, right as the dry tyres became the faster tyre, and you were able to maximise those mediums to all the way to the end of the race.
Yeah, first of all, I have a good engineer on my vocal, so he take me on the backpack, and yeah, the setup was good for the race. I make 4 setup for this race, so 2 dry and 2 wet setup. And at the moment when I see the rain on the overlay, I know what to do, and I race.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. So looking forward to in 2 weeks' time, we're in Spa for another sprint round, a 40-minute race. I'm sure you're hoping that you'll be able to demonstrate the same kind of pace that you did here this evening, being the first driver so far in the silver split that isn't Christoph Rappel, Aidan Russell, or Marco Galetti to finish on the podium. I'm sure you'd like to replicate that result in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, of course. On Spa, I have the pace too, so I'm pretty confident. I'm pretty confident for Spa.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, as I'm sure Charlie does as well.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Have a good one. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Bye. Oh, I think we've just had one more sneak into the interview waiting room, and it's yet another of the cars that was involved in that final skirmish in the hypercar class, Stanislas Pajot, the man who Rasmus Andreasen, as we just heard, had rather had enough of looking at the back of in that last 20 minutes. Stanislas, how was the end of that race for you?
Yeah, it was a bit stressful, to be honest, seeing one car in my rounds and a second one that was absolutely a fucking rocket ship at the end. And I was also trying to overtake Mohamed that was just in front of me that have to do a bit of fuel save because he put less fuel on the last pit stop. So yeah, it was an eventful end of the race for me. Looking forward, looking backwards, and you can't afford a mistake basically on these conditions, especially on a track like Imola.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were talking a lot throughout the race, especially in those difficult periods through the rain, that trying to stay on track can be as difficult as anything, especially at Imola, where the track is so narrow and the runoffs are made of grass and gravel rather than the nice grippy tarmac that you're used to. Looking forward to 2 weeks' time, Stanislas. We're in Spa for another of our sprint rounds, the 40-minute races. I'm sure you'll be hoping to bring home another points finish there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm quite happy with my position I managed to get today. I could have been P5. I got a small spin because of on Variante Villeneuve because of engine braking. So I lost 4 seconds here, but yeah, on this condition, I would say it's okay for result. I tried a wet setup, and I was quite comfortable on the start of the race, and I was lacking a bit of pace at the end. So let's see what condition we'll have at Spa. We know that it's in real life it's quite a tricky track, depending on the period of the year. So let's see how it will be in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for joining us, Stanislas, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again before too much longer. Have a good evening. Thank you. I would like to briefly apologise if there was any language that anyone heard during Stanislas's interview there. Obviously, drivers are under an immense amount of pressure during the races. We're not going to punish anyone. Words are words at the end of the day, but if you did hear any language there, I do apologise. I mean, Charlie, what a race. I mean, my brain is fried.
I was just taking it all in during that, which is why I was kind of quiet for most of it. But yeah, just taking it all in. Lots of action happening, lots of drama, especially at the end there. It was really interesting to watch and witness.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I mean, if we know anything from these Silver Split guys, is that they do fight tooth and nail, and we've seen that across the grid in both classes. And I'm sure that'll be something that we see again in Spa in 2 weeks' time. So, to everyone who has watched and joined us this evening at the Autodromo Internazionale di Enzo e Dino Ferrari, I had to say it one more time just to show off. Thank you all for joining us for round 3 of the BPtuning. Oh, go on. What are you saying?
How one subscriber away from 1,000.
Are we one subscriber away? The stream isn't ending. The stream isn't ending until we hit 1,000 subs. The stream isn't ending until we hit 1,000 subs. We've got to do it. Come on, I believe. I'm going to be.
We'll give you a couple minutes. Get it in there. If you're not already subscribed, make sure you're subscribed now.
I'm going to be refreshing our YouTube page like a madman. 999 subscribers. Come on, there's got to be someone who isn't subscribed. Hit the button. It's just a tiny little button just there. You'll see it. It's really easy to hit. Come on. Surely.
Hit the button.
Hit the button. The big red button. Oh, I don't know how long. I don't know how long we can drag the stream out for. We're so close to 1,000 subs.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to do an everyone ping.
Everyone, we're one subscriber away from 1,000. No, don't do it. Don't do it. No, they'll be so annoyed. We ping them enough as it is. So everyone who has joined us tonight, thank you so much for joining us for round 3. It's 1,000 subs. There we go. We can end the stream. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for round 3 of the BPtuning Contender Series Silver Split. Thank you for getting us to 1,000 subscribers. The growth so far this season has been absolutely ridiculous. Make sure if you want to keep up with all the content, all the race results, to follow us on Instagram and to come and join us in the Discord where you can get updates on everything that's going on, or head over to https://www.virtual-motorsport-series.com and check out our website where all of the standings and all of the race results get published as well. You can also check out all of the sponsors across all of our series over there. We will see you in 2 weeks' time for the next round of the BPtuning Contender Series. But Sunday evening, 6:25 p.m. BST, is round 3 of the SimGrid Platinum Split, the fastest of the fastest, the creme de la creme. Make sure to tune in then, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your evening.